think that's perfectly fine what Nick said.
So I just want
No comment check.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, Connor, you said that this is true in the perception. You said the perception of people. Guess what? People, that's the perception of white, male, straight, fucking people. In the perception of a certain limited group, in the perception of, let's just say a culture. Let's not essentialize and make it, because it's not all white, straight men, but in the group of cops, in the group of people who think a certain way, yeah, I'm a lot more dangerous than Uncle MAGA with his fucking IEDs in his fanny pack that you're not checking because you think it's just a fanny pack with this diabetes medication in it. So I'm sorry, I got a little passionate there, but like seriously, like this is not, don't say perception, like our perception is fucking universal. Don't fucking erase my perception from the equation of like what you're, considering there. I think you have a very limited view and like it shows, it fucking shows. That's why you're tripping over your dick and like, just, I'm gonna calm down. I'm gonna mute myself, okay? You guys go on.
I can disagree with Connor in everything he said, because when I say that.
Oh my god, holy shit, chat. I actually did get a little bit like right, then I gotta calm down. Let me put my Waluigi up here, and oh my god, he's falling over. I'm like shaking. I had so much coffee, chat. Oh my god, seriously, I hate that shit though. Like perception and the people's perception, you're just like taking over everyone's perception and be like, oh, this is people's perception. What I think is people's perception. Go fuck yourself with that No, I understand why people react the way they do to Connor now. I totally get it now. All right. Did I not start out this panel really calm and really nice? I think I did.
To fucking people in churches. It's not a threat to the cops. The cops are wearing fucking body armor. They're rolling into the call after the shooting has already occurred. So if I look at fucking Jim Bob, the fucking dude with his fucking fanny pack and a concealed weapons permit, I don't see a threat because he's protecting the status quo. I literally don't know where we disagree, and I have no idea how the fuck I'm making you mad. Whereas
I just feel like my perceptions are getting walked over, right? When you said people's perceptions, right? But you're talking about a certain group of people's perceptions, and you
sure. When did I ever say it was universal? I never said it was universal.
No,
I was talking about law enforcement perception.
You didn't like say okay in the sense of the cops, their perception. But you said people's perception. You said people's. And that's what
so if I modify it, hold on, guys, Jesus Christ, it's literally a conversation between me and her right now, okay? So if I modify my language to say law enforcement's perception and conservative America's perception,
that helps
do we agree?
Yeah, I think we
do
agree.
We agree?
No, I don't agree with that.
Do I not? Maybe I missed
something. I do not agree with that.
Why?
I don't agree that law enforcement, just you saying so doesn't make it so. I don't agree that law enforcement's perspective.
No comment.
It was literally a linchpin argument of the beginning of the conversation for the storming of the Capitol. You're shooting your own point in the foot.
No, I'm not.
What are you doing? Stop.
I'm not.
Please, take the W.
Good to be here, and hi everybody.
Yeah, absolutely happy to have you. I didn't know Tuesdays were rougher for you, but yeah, okay, good to know.
I mean, it's just they're not officially bad for me. They're just like happen to be bad. Like something always happens on a Tuesday.
Okay, are you the good kind of busy or the bad kind of busy?
The good kind of busy, yeah. The good kind of busy, but just like it's overwhelming. So it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, but it's a very delicious fire hose. Let's just say.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. And last but certainly not least, we have a creature from the nicer, kinder, gentler side of your nightmares. Dooby, thanks for coming through. Dooby, this is a new look for you. A welcome change, I think. But I feel like you are testing us, getting us to lower our guard before the usual happens. Dooby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. And thank you very much for having me on. I always like to come on and talk to you people.
Yeah.
Especially my favorite lawyer, Pisco.
Not a lawyer.
you have books, that's good enough for me.
Okay, all right. So we'll roll on and get started with our very first topic. After the Capitol riots, Twitter permanently banned President Donald Trump for seemingly stoking more violence on their platform. Was this a fair decision? Should a president or would a world leader ever be blocked from social media? Does the public lose valuable information by not having a direct line of communication to a leader? Should Twitter and other platforms get credit for making this move, or should they be criticized for not doing it sooner? Okay, we'll start. I'll wait for you, Pisco. I'm not gonna start with you, Pisco, because I know what's gonna happen. But no, we'll actually go to you last. Start with you, BadNick. Muted.
Oh, you're
Great
muted,
start.
yeah.
Great start to it all.
Sorry, I'm really dumb. Overall, I go back and forth on this pretty hard because, like, on the one hand, I want to be like, hey, you know what? Private company, do whatever the fuck you want. I kind of understand why it can be a little risky when it's a world leader. On one hand, I think it obviously wouldn't be that hard for the government to set up like a site where a president could do something kind of like Twitter, without having the ability to get like fucked by being a private company. But as far as whether they should be criticized, I think if it were anyone else who was slightly less of a pain than Donald Trump has been to Twitter, I wouldn't be that upset that it took this long. But with how often he's caused issues on Twitter and how much they've had to bend their own rules to keep him on, I think he should have been gone sooner, just as a precedent sort of deal. So that's kind of where I sit on it.
Okay, thank you. Next, Connor.
Yeah, we always talk about like there's this term that's often used very frequently with free speech, where it's like, well, we believe in free speech unless it's to start a riot or yell fire in a crowded theater or to incite violence or anything like that. And like the really fucking frustrating thing for me is arguing with right wingers right now because Donald Trump didn't explicitly say go raid the fucking Capitol and take members of Congress hostage. So that's actually what's really pissing me off, because basically we've had a narrative since Election Day that the election was stolen, that Venezuela and China are both responsible for it, that the current Democrats and Republicans, the rhinos, are responsible for this fraud. It's the largest and most widespread corruption that's ever hit our society ever. And if I believe that to be true, I can see how raiding the Capitol is justified. But I know it's not true. And I think it's bullshit. And he's basically manipulated a bunch of sycophants to do one of the most egregious attacks on our social institutions in history. And I'm actually really grateful for the American Republican system that it's been able to withstand these attacks, because I think if we were better formed, we would basically be in a dictatorship right now brought on by his sycophantic cult. So no, I'm actually really happy that Twitter banned him. I hope he stays banned permanently. I do take the position that any private industry can take whatever steps they want with any clients they want. And just to wrap it up, if he was advocating for more egregious violence, then I don't think anybody should have any problem with what's just happened. And the fact that he's already done the fucking bullshit he has is obnoxious.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Jangles.
Nice, very well put. Because something that I think regarding like explicit calls for violence, if all the things that Trump were saying were true, then yeah, Connor's kind of right there. It would be very justifiable to storm the Capitol building and like take it by force and take our democracy back by force. And so just by the fact that you're like saying, as the most powerful person on the world, you're saying that all these things are true. You're saying that the election was stolen from us. You're saying that everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. They just don't want to admit it. Yeah, absolutely. He's spreading a bunch of lies that have inarguably caused an insurrection, an attempted fascist coup of our democratic process. This is inarguable that he was the instigator in that, and this is not going to stop. Like, oh well, we tried, we're going to stop again. Like the FBI reported either today or sometime yesterday that there's going to be like mass armed protests in all 50 states and in every capital of every state. And so that to prevent further insurrection attempts, yeah, I think this is the only reasonable, responsible route that Twitter could have chosen, because Trump has gotten preferential treatment in the past, like things that would have gotten a normal user banned. Twitter kept him on because he's the president of the United States. So, in essence, him getting upset about this and people getting upset for him about this are upset that Trump has no longer gotten the special treatment that he's been used to for all this time. And so, like, I think it's kind of funny to say that, oh, they're just targeting Trump because he's the bad person who says the bad things. Well, no, he was getting preferential treatment beforehand, and now he's finally being treated like everybody else on this platform. So I don't think that we're losing a direct contact to the president. So, I mean, celebrities have PR teams for a reason, because if they say something wrong, it can make them look bad and ruin their careers. Well, if Trump says something wrong, like how his nuclear button is so much bigger than North Korea's, yeah, that could result in a lot of bad things. And Trump almost instigating nuclear war on Twitter was a very good reason to ban him in the past, but I'm happy they've done it now. And yeah, there's more to say on it, but I'd like to let everybody else talk, and we'll get into the exchanges.
Sure. Dooby.
Muted.
Hello.
There we go.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is that he should have been banned pretty clearly a long time ago. I think that they shouldn't really get any credit for doing it now. They kind of waited to the last minute, like a couple weeks before he's out of office, or I think less than 2 weeks before he's out of office. And when he's already done all this damage, spreading all this misinformation. Now there's like there were the additional questions, right? Is this a fair decision? No, I don't think so. I think based on the TOS rules that they used to get rid of them, in the posts that they outlined as TOS violations, this seems pretty clear that they've stretched it a lot to make this happen, right, within the terms of service. Personally, I don't really care. I don't really think they need to follow the terms of service. I don't really care about that too much. I think that we do kind of lose out, but not having the president on Twitter. If it was another president, I think this one being on Twitter, having a direct line of communication to all these people is pretty like demonstrably a net negative. And the only thing that I want to see going forward, I hope to see going forward, is that this standard is applied across the board, right, regardless of political ideology. So I think you can make a pretty fair argument that we just got through a year of riots. There are dozens and dozens of Proud Boy cells and Antifa cells and God knows what else cells on Twitter, right? That use Twitter to organize, that advocate for destruction of property and all this uprising nonsense. I'd like to see all those taken off too. So that's what I'm hoping to see going forward. I'm hoping, now that this line has been crossed, we see it crossed a lot more and people start being more reasonable.
Next, Marcmunky.
I'm gonna say that he should still have his Twitter. No, I'm just kidding. I think everyone is gonna agree on this topic. Definitely, him no longer being on Twitter is going to be nothing but a net good. For the past 4 years, he has had a complete chokehold on propaganda through his Twitter. He could constantly change the narrative at so fast that we couldn't even keep up with it. Like, he would say 20 different things that were all lies at the same time, and we'd have to counter each and every single one. And his supporters believed every single one of them without realizing the contradiction in all of them. It was endless and constant. And he was retweeting white supremacists. He was retweeting QAnon supporters. He was helping fuel the flames of conspiracy theorists. Like, this is all very dangerous, and I'm not shocked at all that it ended up the way it did. We have been, the left has been warning about this for the past 4 years, that this is coming to a head, that eventually all this rhetoric turns into action. And that's exactly what happened on Wednesday. So yes, he shouldn't have a Twitter. And if he does, it needs to be run by only a staffer, and it needs to only be tweeting out what he's doing on that day or something that he's promoting at that time, some sort of policy that he's wanting to push, or maybe a press conference or two. As to whether or not it infringes on his free speech, hell no. He's the president. He at any time can call a press conference. He can stick his head out the front door of the White House and he can go, "Hey, press, talk to me." And they will listen to every single word he says. They will replay it multiple times a day. You'll hear it multiple times throughout the week if he only gives one press conference and nothing else. It's there's no point in talking about his freedom of speech when he sits on top of the biggest megaphone in the country, if not the world.
Gotcha. Nocommentchick.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would absolutely say that, you know, under our current system, which is capitalism, last time I checked, private property is fucking sacred, and you need to let Dorsey have his toy. Whatever Dorsey wants to do with that toy, with that Twitter, you know, it should just be like, you know, if we're really going to go by like a true libertarian, you know, anarcho-capitalist precepts, that we got to say that like it's his. But realistically speaking, it's a lot more. It is somewhat like a network. It is somewhat more like maybe we should treat it more like traditional media. I can get the right wing's point when they're saying that this has kind of become part of the commons and that this is some sort of a free speech mechanism. And I think that, you know, going forward, right, you know, that there's got to be some some credence paid to that. There's got to be some other way of managing our social media rather than just let it be, you know, whoever owns it does whatever they can. But honestly, like, I don't want to hear any of this shit from the rightoids. I don't want to hear any of this shit about, like, you know, we got to, you know, force Dorsey to do this or that. Because, like, if they're the same people that were telling me that, like, you know, private property is sacred, that's absolutely incompatible. And they got to, like, check themselves and ask themselves, am I really, like, fully capitalist? Maybe I'm a little bit of a commie after all. And that's going to be an interesting realization for them. But seriously, yeah, it could probably be regulated more for the public good, though, because, like, if you look at the regulations for networks, for television, a lot of that has to do with what is in the public interest, what is in the public good. They're actually required to do certain things, like, you know, give time to political candidates, but they're also forbidden for transmitting stuff that's socially irresponsible, i.e. the shit that Donald Trump has been tweeting out. So I think either way, whether it's managed by some kind of regulation in a less, you know, purely, you know, capitalistic, you know, system, or whether we're just going to say it's Dorsey's toy, I think either way, Trump's fucked, you know, because he can't, like, just do whatever he wants, and he wants to use Twitter to bypass the media. The media would be the normal, like, watchdog, guard dog to kind of keep that shit, you know, like, oh shit, you know, like, this isn't something we should transmute. The president's clearly, like, kind of like off the rails here. And, you know, I mean, I guess I'm glad that corporations are doing it. Feels like a little bit of strange bedfellows right now, and like I said, I'm not so sure how comfortable I am with that going forward, but that's a system that we got right now, and thank God that somebody's, like, watching and is gonna, like, you know, kind of shut this shit down before it gets even worse. So I guess it's for the best. I don't know. Feels weird, man. That's what I've got to say. Feels weird, man.
Peace go.
Thank you, Prime. I think the first question before we address whether or not this was a fair decision is whether or not it was illegal. Now, the lecture fans and Madison Cawthorns of the world will say to you and everyone else that this was unconstitutional, what Twitter did. Why? Because in their, I guess, philosophy or legal analysis, Twitter is what's considered a public forum. Stop and think about that for a second. The rules with respect to public forums and the kinds of restrictions you can put on speech in public fora are, it's extremely limited what you can do. You can regulate somewhat the time, place, and manner. You can restrict certain speech with compelling reasons, but you can't really restrict speech at all with respect to, like, the content of the speech, usually, unless it's something like an incitement to violence or something like, or harassment content. Now, if we really take that philosophical approach that these platforms are public fora, I think we have to come to the conclusion that, you know, Twitter can't really ban spam. Twitter can't do anything with respect to these platforms. And I think that can't be the case. Our tests for looking at what is a public fora typically revolve around whether it's a quote unquote traditional public forum. These are places like roads and parks, places of time immemorial where speech has been conducted as part of our democracy. And also designated public forums where the government itself says this is a space for free speech. I could imagine a world in which the government releases some sort of utility speech platform. I don't think that Twitter or Facebook can be construed as a traditional public forum. Now, I could imagine a situation in which Twitter and Facebook become so ubiquitous with respect to speech that they just engulf all speech-related activity, and we just have to treat them as public forum. I don't think we're there yet. I want to caution people who just say private ownership, therefore not public forum. That analysis can't be entirely correct either, because Lecture Fan and others, and Madison Cawthorn, will point to cases like Marsh versus Alabama. This is a case in which there's a private town, and the private town, the people in charge, try to prevent individuals from putting out leaflets. The court in that case, Supreme Court, said it doesn't matter that it's privately owned. Just because it's privately owned it shouldn't be allowed for these town operators to be able to restrict people passing out leaflets on what is de facto traditional public forum like roads and streets and that sort of thing. So don't look just to the private ownership as something that's dispositive, though it is relevant, right? If something is privately owned, it's probably less likely to be a public forum. On the question of whether or not this was a fair decision, I leave that to Twitter and their guidelines. I think that they're competent enough to enforce their own guidelines. I don't think that these people have a claim that that these guidelines are arbitrary, or that they were enforced arbitrarily. You can tell also by the court cases that are being brought that they're not really mad for free speech reasons. They're mad at because of antitrust reasons. And so we should call them out their arguments. They're just essentially upset that they're not able to spread their lies on whatever platform they want.
All right. So we'll open this up to the floor. And I guess I'll take the other side of this, because a lot of people are agreeing that he should have been banned. But I think there's arguments that he shouldn't have been. But go ahead. If anyone wants to jump in first?
Yeah, I'd like to actually start off with something. Me first, Connor. One thing that what I said in my opening statement, I'm really in the middle on this, because one of the things that really concerns me is, as much as I like to laugh and giggle about the fact that far right people are getting completely fucked off platforms and all that, I do think it's going too far right now. When it's just Twitter, it's not a big deal, and this actually might be one of the later topics, but with the recent stuff that happened with Parler, it's being proven. Oh wait, no, it's not one of the topics. So yeah, good. With Parler having just been completely disbanded, it's not on Google Play, it's not on the Apple Store. AWS pulled out. They can't find somebody to take them. Their lawyers are pulling out. It's getting to the point where we can't even tell them make your own platform anymore, because this level of removal is going so high. Payment processors are pulling out. Web hosting's pulling out. ISPs could start pulling out. So on one hand, I want to laugh and say fuck you guys, but at the same time, it's really getting scary to be somebody on the right.
Nick, I have a question for you. So
yeah,
I think viewed in context, these actions make total sense. We are living in the wake of one of the most incredible moments of insurrection in our country's history. There are currently plans in place, as noted by the FBI, to storm and protest with armed riots or armed protests, whatever you want to call them, U.S. Capitol or state capitals right now, and including Washington, D.C. And, Parler's way of addressing this kind of what I think are extremely dangerous communications, I think is practically non-existent. So why should we have sympathy for these services that aren't diligent in removing these kinds of dangerous communications?
Right. So I'll give you a quick response, and then I want to give it to Mark or Connor. But my only response to that would be, I do agree with you. Parler, I don't feel bad specifically about, but my concern would be that this, starting with Parler, could end up stretching onwards and hitting more slightly less far-right people, right? It starts with the most extreme, but there's always that concern that they slowly move the wall closer and closer to kick out more and more people. So I know that's the slippery slope bullshit, but it could be worrying, I think.
And I sorry. Yeah, so I kind of want to back it up here a little bit. So for instance, it's so if we have an armed insurrection, this is the same argument that we have to apply to lefty riots, right? If you want to address, yeah, we'll get to it. But if you want to address why these people are becoming insurrectionists, if you want to talk about why they're doing what they're doing, why they think they're doing what they're doing, like, I'm not going to disagree with you on whether or not it's fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. But at the same time, it's like you have to address the reasons why these people are doing what they're doing. And the reason why they're doing what they're doing is because a fucking con man is using the most free speech platforms in the fucking planet in order to manipulate them in order to incite violence. And this is where I seriously, like, this is where I'm borderline disgusted with the Republican Party at this point. For the people who have not called a fucking spade a spade, need to come out and fucking say, they need to grab their nutsack and need to say, Donald Trump is a fucking con man. He's been lying to you the entire time. We've investigated his fucking claims that the election was obtained by fraud. We haven't been able to produce any evidence in order to do that. The only reason why we went along with this was for political fucking capital. And on top of that, if he fucking pulls any shit like this again, we're basically sticking his ass in jail for inciting a fucking riot. And that's like, that needs to be what's said out loud. You have to deal with the root of the problem.
Good luck. I mean, how many of the Republicans in office do you expect to vote on impeachment? Very few.
I
right?
don't know, but
So,
you also see a lot of rats running off of the ship.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
The reason, it's not where I thought you were going with counterpoints. What I thought you were going to say was, well, if this were the case that any tragedy or terrorist attack can justify any policy, then you should be in favor of like the Patriot Act and the nanny state and all these sort of things. I think there's a difference here. So one is something that I believe to be unconstitutional and helpful, things like the Patriot Act and that kind of mass surveillance, versus action which I don't consider to be unconstitutional, namely platforms, not giving, not harboring these kinds of viewpoints. And that is helpful in reducing the promulgation of these ideas in a way that I think is actually more intense than condemnation by public officials.
Yeah, and that's actually, but here, so let me give you the slippery slope, and then you tell me, kind of like where it's ill-considered or something like that. So what we're talking about is a lot of right-wing people and a lot of conservatives basically feel not at home on Twitter. They don't feel at home at Facebook. They feel like all of their positions are being pushed out of the Overton window, and we can argue about whether or not that's a good thing. But what's concerning is when somebody goes out of their way to create an alternative to YouTube, create an alternative to Twitter, create an alternative to Facebook, and then those websites can't even find hosting, because of what they're doing. Now, basically being the networking site for a domestic insurgency, maybe that's, kind of one of the lines that we need to draw. But at the same time, it's still concerning that
Can I give you a hypothetical?
Create a new platform.
So can I give you a hypothetical? So in order
Yeah.
to, I think, be philosophically consistent with this line of argument, which I think is a good one, you have to imagine that it's not, kind of borderline Trump supporters along with extremists. Imagine that it were just extremists. So imagine that the KKK wanted to have a platform and they tried to request Amazon to host their servers on that platform.
Mhm.
And it was just the KKK, not anything outside of the KKK. Do you think that Amazon would be justified, as well as the rest of the private market, and saying, no, we're not going to do it, we're not going to host?
Yeah, I do.
So then
And
there's no real, you're relying on the judgment call of Amazon to say, no, this is a step too far. And it's the same thing in this situation. You're relying on the judgment call of Amazon. Now, you might disagree with that judgment call, but if you're already sort of delegating that judgment call to them in the extreme case, then it stands to reason that you're delegating that to them in the more mixed case.
Yeah, one of the things that you brought up though that was like really interesting and kind of terrifying though is that like Facebook, Twitter, like all these social media sites or whatever, you're talking about how they could become the new commons. That like for us, these are new technologies. But 50 years to 100 years from now, kids who are born by 8 years old, they have like a Twitter or some shit or a fucking TikTok. The commons argument is going to be a lot stronger in 50 to 100 years. So that's kind of my fear is if we don't have these arguments about like what's the moral line, then we're basically gonna, like, I think Dooby, weirdly enough, the notes that I took during the initial comments were actually directed to Dooby. He said that he was happy that Trump was banned, but he previously argued for the nationalization of social media. I might have inferred some intention to him that maybe he didn't have, but my intention that I inferred for him was that he wanted it nationalized so everybody would have a voice no matter what their perspective was. So I'd kind of like a response from Dooby on that.
No, that wasn't why. Yeah, no, I think that groups like what is it? These I can't remember the name now. The QAnon types, right?
Mhm.
These Proud Boys, these kind of like conspiracy theorists, these people that are saying that they should like go to the Capitol with guns and all. I think these people are like demonstrably like dangerous. I don't think that's the kind of speech that we should be allowing. Now, if Twitter was like something like Twitter was nationalized, I would want them removed. Right, but I'd also want
That's big. Everyone just heard that. So why limit it there? I mean, what you're saying is you think that the government should be able to stop people from speaking out against ideas you don't like.
I mean, isn't this kind of a like fire in a crowded theater
I'm
sort of
not there.
scenario here? Aren't we sort of talking about it? Like, I mean, this is just basic. Like, this is how the First Amendment is applied elsewhere. I don't see a problem with what Dooby's saying.
I have a huge problem with what Dooby is saying, because he's essentially saying that we shouldn't allow QAnon people to spread their ideas. Even the government should put people in jail for spreading QAnon. How many of you agree with that?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about, though. From
well,
QAnon,
I don't know about
QAnon can be so many different things, right? Like, you know, if they're saying that, like, you know, people, if they're making libelous claims against people being satanic pedophiles that are like, you know, taking your children, and you know what I mean? When it's stuff that's obviously trying to get people, it's not a crime, but it can get people killed, right? You know, that's the kind of thing.
Well,
like,
can I wanted to hear the end of Dooby's thought, and then I kind of wanted to tell where it's going. Or talk about.
I mean, maybe after maybe you'll have a problem with it in a second. No comment check.
Okay,
because if we had a nationalized platform, I wouldn't just want the Proud Boys and QAnon and people that are saying that the Democrats wanted your children. I'd want anarchists, people that are calling for revolution against the government, Antifa. Right, violent groups have been organizing on these platforms for like a decade.
That's where it always goes, Dooby. Like that's a really hard thing to say. Who's what? Like what makes somebody an anarchist? What makes somebody Antifa? I want to know this.
Well, when they call themselves anarchists and Antifa and call for the revolution against the government.
Okay, so those names, we banned those names. Do you know what we did that with QAnon, and they just changed it to like, or not QAnon, but they changed it to like QAmom or something. Like, you know, they just changed their name.
Why are you granting that? We hunt them down and changed them.
Sorry, I'm talking over people again. Sorry,
Yeah, we would just if they change the name, we figure out what name they changed to and take that out.
Why are you granting the premise that that the government should be in this role?
We're blacklisting then.
No. But why should the government be allowed to censor and potentially imprison, because you have to enforce this with force, imprison anarchists? Do we really think that the government should have this power? That someone like Donald Trump, who's in office, should have the power?
Okay, I want to hold on. I'm going to let Connor talk first, but I do have a thing on this.
Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to jump in is because Nocommentchick was like, oh, well, where is this going to go wrong? And then Dooby would like immediately demonstrated where it goes wrong. So for instance, like Donald Trump was boys with Jeffrey Epstein back in the 80s and 90s. There's allegations that he was having sex with underage prostitutes that were, that were trafficked internationally. Now, some of these are rumor, but also some of these are backed up by fact. So at what point do you say, what's the line between QAnon and actual legitimate, like real conspiracy to basically have international sex trafficking of underage prostitutes perpetuated by some of the most powerful people in this country? Not only that, but like Jeffrey Epstein hung out with Bill Clinton. Jeffrey Epstein hung out with, I'm trying to think of the lawyer guy, like Alan Dershowitz. These people are incredibly connected. He went to the fucking Clinton wedding. So at what point do you draw the line between conspiracy and, conspiracy and then like the authority of the government to maintain, hold on, I'm almost done. To maintain social harmony. This is the whole reason why I argued passionately with Socialism Done Left and Dooby last time. So just to show you an example of where this can go wrong, China's version of like Jeff Bezos or whatever disappeared last year.
Jack Ma.
We don't know where he is. He was, and he said something mildly critical of the communist government before he disappeared. So is it now conspiracy to talk about, like, if you were in China and you had this similar system in America and Jeff Bezos just disappeared off the fucking radar and you wanted to talk about it on the internet, what's the line between you're a QAnon conspiracy dumbass and you legitimately talking about the government assassinating one of the wealthiest people in the country? And this is the slippery slope with a modern contemporary example that happened like 6 months ago.
I'd like to offer an alternative because I partly agree with Dooby, but not really, because like. So one thing is, I think it's totally fine if people want to be like dumb fuck conspiracy theorists and like spread a bunch of stupid shit. I don't really care that much. I think what I would probably agree to on Dooby is if it were more reserved to like open calls of violence that like could be acted upon, not just like bullshit, but like any group that's like actively, openly calling for like violence or like violent insurrection or, for instance, oh, this is gonna make some people mad, murdering landlords and high-level capitalists, people who talk about murdering democratic, when you're talking about like more open and like active calls for violence within a community, that it becomes like a meme that they're known for, like the fact that like the far left is kind of known for memeing about fucking killing landlords and shit. Yeah, I probably would be okay with somebody stepping in to handle that in some fashion. It gets a little creepy, a little
Straight
weird.
up.
But
Yeah,
to be
I mean, like,
clear,
that's-
that's never been part of the First Amendment has never protected that kind of speech.
Yeah, crime,
No,
fire
it
in a
hasn't.
crowded theater, basically. I mean, like, I agree with, like, I mean, I was agreeing with Dooby for a second there, but I guess we got off at some point. I am one of those big, scary anarchists that he wants to blacklist the fuck off of social media, so I feel like I can speak to this. I mean, I agree with him based on the idea of banning Proud Boys and Q, but I was trying to be more circumspect in my thing. It wasn't by their identities, like, you know, you're called Proud Boys, okay, banned. It was more like, okay, are they advocating doing violence? Are they saying do violence? Yeah, that's banned. You know, that's the fire in a crowded theater thing that I feel like it's consistent with our current like application of the, you know, First Amendment law here. So like, rather than trying to like, I mean, you're literally talking about like following people's alts around, you know, when you're like, okay, if they change their name from QAnon to QAmon, we're gonna ban that too. And then like somebody says, hey, Q Mao is actually QAnon too, and it's not, and then we ban that because it's like fucking, I don't know. I just that seems like real sketch.
Yeah, no, I think people are expressing seditious or potential like the speech that might lead to violence online. Yeah, they should be off the platform.
Yeah, so not by
100%.
their
And I think we can look at.
actions.
I think if you were to look at like the Torch Network, for example, and go down their list of affiliated Antifa groups that organize on Twitter, you'll find dozens of them, dozens of posts of people outright advocating for violence, advocating for the destruction of property, and all those groups should be off Twitter.
The group's not the individuals. The group's not the individuals.
Let's go.
Both.
Let's go to Marcmunky. He's been waiting patiently, and then we'll go to Jangles.
Okay, so the first issue I have is very similar to what Pisco was talking about, and I'll phrase it a different way. If you're going to make it a public square, you have to make it a public square. You can't be picking and choosing. You can't be going, you know, oh, this group can't be here. These people who talk like this can't be here. If it's a public square, it's a public square. But what we could do, the better option, is we break up all these companies so that there's a number of different ways that they can compete. And if we do have a government option that is offered that provides no anonymity, I have a lot of problems with that word, and allows you to speak openly, but it's attached to your name, it's attached to where you're from. So there's consequences that can come with
No,
what
but
you say.
there's
So you would carry yourself a certain way. That might be a lot more doable.
No, I think there's a big problem with that, though, right? Because if we just break up these companies so they can compete, I don't want these crazy ass QAnon types finding some platform that'll host them. And
They're always going to find one.
Yeah, well, we can make it really hard, right? I don't want them finding somewhere that'll host them and spreading all their crazy shit on there. And in 6 months, we have people killed because they think that the Democrats are trying to eat babies and shit, right?
I don't want you talking, Dooby. I mean, what would you feel if I decided that Dooby needed to be vanquished from public discourse? I mean, that is precisely the problem. Well,
that could happen.
Does Donald Trump, the winner of the presidential election,
here? Why don't we actually do something about the conditions that drive people to believe in conspiracy theories in the first place?
Because you're not going to solve humanity purely by solving the material conditions. But I just want to jump in really quick. So here's
100%.
We got 11 Jangles. Been waiting very patiently. We'll get back to
okay.
All right, so what these I think what most of these conversations eventually devolve into is like us being so where's the line? There is no line. you will never find a line. It's always going to be arbitrary to a certain extent. Because, okay, if I were to say, like, do you think the government should be allowed to arrest people for their speech? All of us would say the answer to that is yes, because all of us qualify it. Well, okay, let's say, okay, if I scream at someone that I'm going to kill them, technically that's speech, but I think all of us would agree, no, that's a direct threat of violence. All of us have our exceptions to that rule. Like, of course, we want the government to be able to arrest people for their speech when that speech meets certain requirements. Now, what those certain requirements are can vary tremendously, but they do exist. And the other extreme is that well, if someone is threatening social harmony, if someone is like threatening an insurrection of social harmony, you can definitely take that too far as well. That makes you subject to something called the heckler's veto. If enough people band together and make a big fuss about whatever, they can introduce the heckler's veto and say that, well, this is disrupting social harmony. This, I don't know, this black person in this cartoon, that's disrupting social harmony. And if enough people like make a fuss about it, we can get the heckler's veto that way. So we need to be comfortable with ambiguity, because at the end of the day, speech is not objective. It never was objective. It never will be objective. We cannot enforce an objective line. That's why we have judges. That's why we have some people who are arbitrators of what is and is not acceptable speech, both in the government and in platforms. So there is going to be some of that fuzz there. And, it's... we're never going to find a perfect objective line that never moves as to what kind of speech is acceptable versus what kind of speech is not, which is why, like, I think it's okay if Twitter does not enforce its guidelines uniformly, because it's not. So if, for example, the next president, because Biden being the the Antifa communist lord that we all know he is, if a politician comes in and says something that Biden disagrees with, and Biden comes in and posts a picture of a guillotine. Well, he didn't call for violence. He didn't. But of course, he's the president of the United States. That is a direct call for violence based on who he is. And even if other people get away with posting a picture of the guillotine under something, Biden should not. And I think it's okay to have that human interpretation rather than just rely on a perfect algorithm that searches for keywords. I think it's okay to have that certain sense of subjectivity in how we enforce these things.
Can I just add a quick addendum to Jangles before we move on?
Sure.
There's also the fact that that social media groups like Twitter and Facebook have actually been targeting left-wing groups for a long time. You just don't hear us whining about it. We just make a new account and we go about our day. We try and find our followers again. But I know people are on their 5th, 6th, 7th accounts. So, cry me a river.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just want to ask, do you have any examples of that? Because the only one I can really think of is Destiny, and that's because he was saying some really fucking scary shit. Like, are these lefties and like
Hey, be
they're just like
careful.
moderate, or like?
If you say his name 3 times, you know what happens. Be careful there. You said it once, okay?
Hey, that's my
Say
dream, dude. I love it.
Beetlegeistiny is what I call Dad's
I
shit.
have some personal.
Besides, I said
mutuals on Twitter
lefties.
who-
I said
Oh,
lefties.
good point.
I
Yeah,
didn't say
lefties, right?
centrists.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Connor.
didn't say centrists.
Yeah, so this is kind of where Jangles, like your point is well received, that like the ball needs to be moved, and like social context, who's calling for it, all that kind of stuff. Do they have the capacity for violence? How serious is the threat? Is it a joke? Is it a meme? Are we even capable of interpreting it ironically? Like I take this ambiguity, I'm sure, is like the antithesis of what Dooby wants. So your nuance is actually well appreciated here. But at the same time, like what I want to muddy the water even more. Our society, literally the United States of America, is built on the concept of justified revolution. Not only is it built on the concept of justified revolution, but there are a whole bunch of political advocates that are basically saying that we are on the precipice of a revolution because our rulers are not addressing the people's needs. So if you talk to lefties, it's basically the fact that the material conditions have basically decreased over the past few years, that income disparity has significantly increased, that capitalism is being held up by propaganda and duct tape, and that basically the average person is just completely fucked in our society and they don't even realize it. So that justifies some level of cultural revolution. And if you talk to right people, it's about, that they don't care about immigration. They talk about all these problems that we supposedly can't solve. I don't feel at home in my own country anymore. Obviously, there could be some racist element there. But at the same time, the country is founded on this conception that if the oligarchs and the people in power calcify society to the degree that it becomes tyrannical or authoritarian, you actually have the justified right to destroy your government and begin anew. This is actually what makes me really grossed out and sad about the storming of the Capitol. Is like, I don't disagree with the concept of the storming of the Capitol or political violence in general, but it was used for the dumbest fucking reason on the planet. Like if Donald Trump was actually Hitler, storming the Capitol in order to remove him would be justified. If we were run by a whole bunch of communist authoritarians who were throwing right-wing people into fucking gulags, storming the Capitol would be justified. But we stormed the Capitol in a context that sucks ass.
You said storm the Capitol, but do you also, I mean, how far would you take it? Would you be cool with the zip ties? Would you be cool with like holding?
No.
Okay, so
Well,
not
hold
that.
on.
Just
In
breaking
what
into.
context?
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm getting you right. Okay, I got you.
No, in what context? Because I said no prematurely. In what context?
Well, like, yeah. So if you're bringing in the zip ties to, like, I guess their plan was to, like, you know, bind the Congress people, and you know, who knows where it would go from there.
Let me answer your question directly, because I think I can have an example. If Donald Trump was running a purely right-wing fascistic society and they were liquidating ethnic and LGBTQ minorities, literally executing them, then yeah, I would be okay with storming to the Capitol with zip ties and holding those people accountable with violence. But that's because we're talking, this is something that I'm actually really passionate about, so I'm not trying to violate any TOS about it. But the reason why I can say that is because I think there's an important balance of power between civilians and their government. And America, the United States of America, was specifically founded to maintain that balance of power. So that's why when people talk about limiting the First Amendment or limiting the Second Amendment or limiting the Fourth Amendment or anything like this, it just starts sending off fucking alarm bells in my head.
Well, what you're saying essentially is that given the right circumstance, you're liable to do a great number of things, really anything, given the right circumstance. And I think that's fairly uncontroversial. Your point about the First Amendment, I think, is well taken. In order for us to have bloodless revolutions, that's essentially our elections, our form of bloodless revolutions. And key to that continuing, and for it continuing to be bloodless, is for the First Amendment, among other rights, to be respected. I disagree with Jangles that the rule is arbitrary. Now, at foundation, you know, at an ethical level, maybe it's arbitrary to have drawn the line at, you know, clear and present. I don't think it's clear and present danger anymore. There's another test now. But applying the rule isn't arbitrary. You know, saying that it's not based on the content of the speech, it's based on direct calls of criminality. Saying that if there's a compelling government interest, that is not an arbitrary test. And as long as we recognize that what we're doing isn't what Doobies wants to do, which is Dooby gets to decide what's harmful speech and priorly restrain people from having that speech. And I think that's dangerous. And it's not at all what Twitter's doing.
Pisco, you made a crazy important point, though, like an insanely important point that's like fundamental to this conversation, okay? The way that we are supposed to go through bloodless revolution, the way that we're supposed to institute incremental change so we can address the needs of the people over time is through elections. It's through representation. So that's actually where, so for instance, like I've run in right-wing circles that are so extreme that basically like they believe the election was legitimately just like fraudulent. They just believe it. And then when I chase down their evidence, it ends up being bullshit.
Yeah, I get your point. Can I just say your point is essentially, given the premises of their belief system and that the machine of democracy isn't working, it rationalizes what they're doing. And
yeah, literally, like these people are insane and they're stupid, but they literally believe what you said, which was that democracy is dead.
Isn't working. Right.
Yeah,
that's
Trump, the election was stolen from, and these demon rat pedophiles are gonna, you know, enslave us all with Jeff Bezos / Bill Gates microchip vaccine.
So, I mean,
good.
Oh, sorry. How are we going to prove intent, though? Because, like, you know, if we leave it up to, like, be like, all right, if you believed that this was a real danger, if you believed that there were, like, satanic pedophiles, then I guess you're justified. Do you know what I mean? Anybody could be like,
no, you throw them in jail anyways.
Yeah. So Nocommentchick, what you said is it's a great question. Is should we care whether or not their logic is internally sound? And their logic is sound. It's just their facts are all wrong. And the answer is we cannot consider that intent when deciding if we're private actors to stifle that content.
We can't consider it when we're talking about prosecution. We can't consider it when we're talking about consequences for these people. Like you have to impose consequence regardless of whether or not these people think they're justified. But when you're talking about combating the ideology, when you're talking about combating it rhetorically, when you're talking about, like, so for instance, like I have a brother-in-law who literally thinks, you know, Trump is the second coming of Christ or whatever. You have to understand that to him, the storming of the Capitol is justified in order to even be on the same planet as him. When you're trying to convince him, like, no, this dude's a con artist, he's a piece of shit, he's been manipulating people. And I'm not saying that my rhetoric has worked. It hasn't, by the way. But he's also never going to be a lost cause to me. He's family. I have to save him somehow, or try to.
45% of Republican voters backed the attack on the Capitol building. So
I saw an
45? Oh my
NPR thing
God.
that dropped it to 18, but
So-
but that's still not good.
There's something I feel like I want to bring up here, because when we're talking about intent and like the idea that some of these people might necessarily be of sound mind and just have been manipulated, I feel like one of the big things there would be less to attack the individual actors and more to attack the people who are largely pushing a lot of these manipulative and like farcical narratives. So that's probably where I would lean there, is I would rather go for the people perpetuating it rather than the people acting on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not as clean as the distinction as you might think, because when it comes down to it, you might want to believe in, you might want to be tricked. There's something called system justification theory, where a lot of people just want to believe lies that are more comforting, especially in regards to maintaining the status quo. So if someone thinks that they're losing their country, they're more likely to seek out and more willingly believe information that already confirms their worldview. And this tends to be biased towards people who are already supported by and endorse the status quo. So I don't think that you can say that all these individuals who were tricked by Trump, no, they weren't. They're adults. Like they are still in large part responsible for their own actions, and that's not in opposition to them being tricked by Trump. Of course, you can be influenced and led on and fired up by Trump, and he deserves all of the blame that we're currently giving him. But we also can't absolve the people who were tricked by him, because they wanted to believe that stuff. It's not like I didn't want to believe that Trump was right about election fraud, but he kind of convinced me into it. No, that's not it at all. They wanted to believe it, and so they did.
Right, but
Sure.
just
Sorry,
real quick
go ahead.
response, because it was to me. I agree with you. Like, obviously, I'm not absolving like hardcore Trumpers and like making, you know, I don't believe that these are all just like poor innocent people that were like tricked by Trump. But I think if you're going to try to quell a problem like this, it's so much easier to start at the people who are doing it rather than the people who are acting on it, because like everyone's saying, like proving intent and all that is always kind of a nightmare. So that would be my answer, would be going for the people up top.
And
I just
Yeah, I
wanted
think
to
that makes-
interject with all the research I did for that. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
No. But like seriously, Jangles, like your point's well taken, because like I'm not trying to absolve anybody criminally. If you literally storm the Capitol with fucking zip ties, I think you should be in fucking prison for the next 15 years. Like unironically.
Differentiate the levels of intent here. One is the kind of local intent to have committed the act in question. That's like mens rea of the particular crime. And the other is kind of like the underlying motive, right? So it's not, if I intend to kill someone, right, the motive might come up in like sentencing. But separate that in your head conceptually from the intent to commit the crime. And really, that's why I think we should move away from kind of retributive justice models and think just of deterrence. Everything, and I don't believe in free will, is just based on prior causes. So, you know, to what extent can we really blame Donald Trump for being who he is? I think it's the same with anything in the world. But let's try to get that out of your head, I think, from the question at hand, which is like, should we, because these people are deluded, treat them better on social media?
Well, I
no.
think the only difference should be in terms of like they should definitely be off social media, but I wouldn't like charge them criminally for things that they say on social media, right? Because unless they started up some website where they were peddling the shit themselves, I think you know, in the short term, the legal consequences should be for the people that started. People like Trump, Ted Cruz, people that are running Giuliani. I think these people definitely need like to see like the inside of a prison cell. But in terms of like people who are because these are people that unfortunately are trusted by a lot of the country, right? So if I'm just trying to put myself into the mindset of my father, for example. He's a Republican. He's always stressed with the Republican Party. The Republican Party is always looking out for him. Suddenly, the Republicans are telling him that the election was rigged. The election was stolen. The Democrats aren't letting show you the evidence and yada yada. It's hard for me to say that like because again, from like you said earlier, from his perspective, he's a patriot. He's the hero, right? He if you were storming the Capitol, he'd be the one saving democracy, and you'd be the one trying to trample on democracy. So yeah, I think there has to be some kind of like a separation there in terms of like the consequences for sure.
But your analysis applies to Trump just as well. I mean, poor Donald Trump, he was born with the brain he was. He actually has deluded himself into thinking he won. And he, it's not his fault that he's totally egomaniac. Like, that's just how he was born. So that's why I think this analysis ultimately collapses into like, why blame anyone for anything?
Yeah, Pisco, if you take your moral framework, like I don't accept your
I don't buy
moral
that at all.
framework. So for instance, for instance, and I'm very serious about this because I think you could have like a passionate philosophical debate about it. Like so maybe determinism is just real. It's just cosmically real that we are bumping into all of the consequences. We're raised by who we're raised by and like all that kind of shit. But the conceptualization of the idea of choice and the conceptualization of the idea of free will literally alters the way that you interact with the world, where you stop on the precipice of choices and you say, hey, there's a variety of options that are in front of me that are going to have drastic consequences. Therefore, I'm going to evaluate all of these choices for the potential of negative consequences and positive consequences. So even how you conceptualize free will or determinism, regardless of like cosmic reality, actually has like a real impact on how you choose to evaluate choices. So people who are determinists, and like I'm not trying to morally indict everybody here, but it's really easy to just say, oh, I was raised the way I was raised. I have the moral system I was raised with. I'm just going to do, kind of what's in my impulses right now because I fucking feel like it. And dude, like literally, I've had people justify negative moral choices to me because they believe that they were determinists.
Well,
like
the argument should be, listen, I'm not married to determinism. I'm just not with free will. But the argument Dooby's having, which is, really Donald Trump deserves more moral blame. That's what I'm attacking. And if you want to punish Donald Trump and Ted Cruz more than the individual protesters, that's fine. But justify it on the basis, well, it will deter people in the future from committing similar organizational crimes, which we think are worse than the people on the ground. Don't try to ground it in this retributive, he really just deserves more blame. Because I think that you'll get on the free will pitfall, and I have to go there with you. And I have to.
I'm going to, but I'm just going to compliment you really quick. You're going to be a great lawyer one day.
Well, okay. I don't think you actually do get into the free will pitfall because I think there's pretty strong evidence that Donald Trump knows he's lying, that Ted Cruz knows that he's lying when he says these things. So I mean, if you're going to say, oh well, he doesn't really have the free will not to lie or to make the decision not to lie, I mean, I guess, but I don't see how that could affect like any.
Well, he doesn't have the free will to choose to be a known liar. So it's turtles all the way down, no matter what. You can't get any lower. I'll just say that he doesn't choose to have the bad brain he has. So
I mean, what you're saying just sounds like an argument against having any kind of criminal consequence. Right?
No, it doesn't. That's why I just gave you alternate theories underlying why we would punish things differently. And one is deterrence theory. One is because we think that we can rehabilitate the people on the ground, but we can't rehabilitate Trump and his surrogates. There are multiple theories that we can where we can have different classes of punishment for different actions that don't rely on, well, he just deserves more moral blame.
Okay, look, no, I'm like, we are actually.
I'm going to let Drew who hasn't gotten a chance. Drew, thank you for joining us. Would you like to say anything on this?
I don't know what the hell's going on. I just got out of a group counseling.
It's topic one: free will versus determinism.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, what the?
So. Okay, well then I wanted to try to maybe focus us a little bit back on the original topic and talk about Trump himself and whether he should be allowed on Twitter, right? And get away for a moment, at least, from this philosophical debate. Because the problem is with Twitter's enforcement, and what was it, Marcmunky or Jangles? I forget which one. Again, white people are all the same to me. They said that they're fine with Twitter doing things subjectively, right? In terms of
I'll stand by it.
Sure. All right, I'll just have to take a on that one.
That's a different.
But the problem with that is that like you have all kinds of bad actors, like world leaders on Twitter that have just been allowed to be there, right? The people who have done much worse than Donald Trump. are on this platform, right? China and its leaders are on this platform, right? Name the warlord, right? They're on Twitter, right? I'm curious if what was it? The remember the Uyghur Muslim, not the Uyghur Muslims.
The Uyghur genocide.
No, not that one. Not that one. The other group of Muslims, I believe there were, they got driven out of that South Asian country, Myanmar, I think it was.
Yeah, Myanmar,
Starts
Burma.
with a Y. Starts
So-
with a Y.
I'd
I know
actually
what
like
you're
to
talking about.
start this
I
topic.
forget.
The Rohingya, I think. It was?
Rohingya. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, the Rohingyas, right?
Yeah.
But like the brutal regime that condoned their behavior, right? I think they're still on Twitter, right? So of all these people, Donald Trump is the worst. Is he actually the
No,
worst?
Okay.
So I want. That's where I want to go with this. Is that why him? Like why Donald Trump? You could say that he caused these riots, but like you could say he told them to march on to the Capitol, but he didn't say fucking destroy it and take hostages, right? People kind of interpret that way, and you could say it's his fault. But in other places, they're like, no, we got to go kill this ethnic group. Those guys, they need to be exterminated. And they're on Twitter. All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like the Ayatollah Khomeini saying that we needed to like eliminate the Zionist regime, right? You could easily make the argument that's like spreading anti-Semitism on Twitter. So yeah, like I said earlier, I don't think this was fair. I don't think this was a fair decision given all the other shit they have on this platform. But I would just like to see this standard applied to everybody going forward.
Okay, I want to jump in here since Dooby talks a lot. Look, if you think it's unfair, I think it's really dumb. Here's the deal. There's two basic ways to look at this. The really easy one to think about is the fact that Twitter's an American company. We're in America. It's a lot easier for them to care about American issues, like the president. But the real issue here is that the president actually did, on several occasions, before the ban, granted, break TOS. Like, he's actually broken Twitter's rules. I don't know if these like genocidal maniacs that we're talking about ever like talked about this shit openly on Twitter, or if it's just shit they did in the real world. Okay, so they've actually like talked about it on Twitter.
Yeah, so I saw several people tweeting out things like, "Is this okay, Twitter?" And it's like someone like with like 10K likes, like openly calling for the death of Israel. It's
Right.
like
So like if that's the case, then yes, they shouldn't be there. But I think it, like I said, it falls under the thing that it's an American company and they're obviously going to care more about shit that affects them, which is going to be American politics. It's not fair. It's pretty dumb, but like it's fucking weird.
It's
Well,
not
the
only
question is,
that,
shouldn't-
though. It's not only that though. It's the fact that America is one of the most powerful nations in the world. Like we're a world
True.
superpower. Of course, they're going to care a little bit more than say somebody, some president of Myanmar or from the Philippines calling for genocide in his own country. They're like, that's going to affect what 10,000 people. They're going to play that game. That's capitalism. That's the problem here. They're reaching for the biggest customer base more than anything. And that's how they do it. They are willing to take negligible damages if they are small enough to where they can actually expand. Like that's just how this game works.
And the implication of people who are sort of levying this criticism of hypocrisy is that, well, maybe Twitter shouldn't be in the game of being in like the moral arbiter of the world. If that's the belief, then you should say that like Twitter shouldn't remove any speech based on content. But I think the only conclusion you can draw from these kind of accusations of hypocrisy is that Twitter should be more consistent in their application of this rule. And if that's the like what the most you're going to say, I guess sure. But we should also understand from like I think everything that BadNick said is correct. They're receiving a unique amount of pressure on this particular individual in the country that they're from. So I don't think it's like a big question mark why they chose to act on this as opposed to those other cases.
No, but even if it's not a question mark, we can understand that the damage done is real, right? Okay, all those things could be true. But calling for ethnic genocide, right? That's a big bad thing, right? That we can maybe reorient the priorities of these social media platforms. Right? But Facebook, I mean, Facebook is actually a bigger villain in that particular thing with the Rohingyas, right? They're actually the bigger villain here because of these lies to spread. And then the lies that they allowed to spread in Brazil during their elections, right? Through WhatsApp, where they were saying Lula, President Lula da Silva's party, was doing all kinds of nonsense. Of course, children were being touched because, of course, that's always what they go to, right? But just like rampant lies were spread, and they did nothing about that, right? And very destructive lies. So we could, I get what you're saying. Yes, sure, they live in this country and they have that credit. I get why, but I'm saying, what should they be doing? Right. And I think we can hold them to a higher standard. And there's the advantages to that, because then like what lines should not be crossed, because now you don't, right? Who knows what line the next person will cross. It will inevitably be different, but they won't know until they've actually already hit that Rubicon, right? Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually like a major propaganda piece in the conservative circles as well, is like the unilateral application of rules. Now, it's not necessarily true. Like Marcmunky brought up the fact that if you're like a more edgy leftist, if you have some, maybe not necessarily violent content, but if you have more edgy content, more pro-communist content, you might get fucking nuked. But at the same time, it's a major conservative talking point that the censorship only goes one. I mean, Jesus Christ. Tim Pool went on fucking Joe Rogan to almost like purposefully not understand anything that the Twitter owner and his whatever rules and regulations lady
or whatever.
Dude, oh my God. So if anybody's watching this and they actually fucking Tim Pool, literally just watch that again, because she literally explains how rules were specifically violated that led to harm in the real world. And Tim Pool's response is not to acknowledge that something bad happened. It's just to ask about the next evidence or the next incident of bad shit happening without ever addressing the fact that he might have been wrong about something. It's super frustrating. Yeah.
Also, we would never, just to put it out there, and I understand that people want more because it's an application of the rules, and maybe that should happen. But in the context of other sort of criminal indictments, in the criminal context, for instance, in this country, a lot of times, or in even your home life, right? When your children talk to you, if you have children, well, Bobby does it, why can't I do it? That's not fair. We don't really accept those arguments at bottom. They can be the impetus for sort of structural changes, but they don't go to the heart of this particular decision. And they're more structural conversations about Twitter and social media in general, but not about the Trump ban specifically.
Well, again, I think this boils back to they're trying to make it a safer place for the most amount of people to use the platform. Transgender people don't feel safe on it, gay people don't feel safe on it, black people don't feel safe on it, Jewish people don't feel safe on it, and well, they just got rid of I'm gonna say the N-word, head Nazi, and who was rallying them all together. Whether or not he's a Nazi or not, he at least rallies them all together, and they all rally behind him. So that whether his personal beliefs don't mean anything, he rubs up against them, he gives them some sort of marching orders, and he doesn't actually have any politics. He just goes ahead and encourages them to believe these things because they like him. So before anybody pushes back at me for calling him head Nazi, I just want to go ahead and clarify that. No, I'm not saying that Trump believes this shit. But
yeah, but if they're trying to make this platform feel safe for the most amount of people, why wouldn't they just lean into that stuff? Because all the groups that you just mentioned are minorities. It seems clear that there's it's not just that, right? If that were the case, they'd get rid of Louis Farrakhan. They call it Jewish people and he said he's anti-termite, right? When talking about Jewish people.
How dangerous is
right?
Louis
So
Farrakhan?
he has a very large base of support in the United States, right? We actually I think if you just let me
out in his name.
Actually, if you just let me finish, there were 3 or 4 attacks on Jewish people. I think at the end of last year in New York that came from people who had very similar ideology to Louis Farrakhan, right? So to say that he doesn't have any effect, yes, he does. Right, he pushes not just on Twitter, right? He does it on Twitter, but he gives speeches where he says this kind of stuff, right? And I think that not only do I want to see this kind of stuff enforced more broadly and across the board, all these Antifa groups that I mentioned, Louis Farrakhan, these dictators and whatnot that are openly like advocating for the death of groups of people. But I think that like behavior off Twitter, right? If someone is nice on Twitter, but they're giving speeches on other platforms and other like public spaces where they're advocating for like killing people and shit, they should also not be on the platform, because this gives them a place to like organize and to grow their base of support, right? So that's what I'm hoping to see.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
just like.
Imagine if Donald Trump had actually been smart and followed the imps code on Twitter and kept some of the spicy stuff off of the platform itself,
Right.
and not engaged. You know, I don't know if we've got Demon Mama coming on later still, but like she's the actual originator of that imps code of you know, and he would just not engage on Twitter, but then meme and cream, you know, on his little, you know, when he's talking to people on video, and it would have been a lot more like that's the whole thing is like these were kind of this was kind of an incompetent coup attempt, this was kind of a ridiculous coup attempt, but it makes me so scared that the immune system of the United States government isn't a little bit more hardy than this, considering like this is like a toenail fungus that almost fucking killed the organism. You know what I'm saying? Like this is bad. If something comes along that's a lot more together than this, I don't know if our system, you know, has the ability even to recognize what's a dangerous terrorist versus what's like an anarchist, which like literally just means you don't like hierarchy. Like being an anarchist doesn't imply that you're the Joker, baby, or anything like that, or you want people to die, or you want chaos in the streets or anything like that. I mean, it's literally just like you don't believe in hierarchy. So obviously like Dooby's standard is pretty ridiculous, and I'd actually like to hear more about that, like where exactly you draw the lines on these things as far as what you do go after and don't go after. Because so far all I've heard is like, Proud Boys go after that, QAnon, go after that, Antifa go after that, and it's got to be more than just like, you know, okay, that sounds pretty bad, let's get rid of that whole group. You know, it's got to be something to do with like this is it doesn't, like Pisco said, you can't draw like an absolute arbitrary line, but I still don't have a good sense of where you're drawing any of yours, Dooby.
It's Dooby is king, and if you're wrong, then you're wrong.
Oh my god! Look, I'm not saying that I would make. I'm not saying that I would make these rules. I think that. Like. I mean, if you wanted to say that, like, where's the line being drawn with QAnon? Is it that the attack on the Capitol? Is that as far as people need to go? Well, hey, not all of those people were QAnon people. Some of them were just Trump supporters, right? So why are we attacking this group and not all Trump supporters? I think the line is going to be arbitrary no matter where you draw it. I'm not the person to say where that arbitrary line is, but it needs to be drawn somewhere. And if we can agree on certain things, like, hey, you can't advocate for violence. Hey, you can't call Jewish people termites.
Yeah.
Right? I think we can start with the easy things and then work away.
Well, I'll ask the panel. So one of the most controversial speech moments in our recent history is the Westboro Baptist Church protesting the funeral of military service people with signs like "God hates F word slur." And other such homophobic and bigoted comments. They went to the Supreme Court and they won on their free speech claims. Do you think that the Westboro Baptist Church should have the right to have those slogans and to protest the funerals of military service people? You don't.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I just don't.
However, they should also be kicked
They
off
have
Twitter.
the right to do it.
Yeah,
Well,
they
well,
certainly have the right. This is
so-
different
so-
than the Twitter thing, for sure.
They
It's
have the
different, I
right,
think.
but I don't think they should have the right. Let me clarify. Obviously,
Why
they
shouldn't they?
can.
So-
Because maybe this is like me being a little bit too far reaching with government power and like the scary slippery slope, but I feel like the use of free speech to protect hate speech is really fucking cringy to me. I'm just saying, like,
What is hate
using
speech?
hate speech, pretty open calls of hatred against protected groups or any group of people based on something that they can't necessarily control.
So, say for instance, a government agency says we have interpreted the law that says no hate speech or the constitutional provision that says no hate speech to also mean that hate speech against capital owners is prevented. Thus, every
Yeah, I'd be fine
person
with that.
advocating, you'd be okay with them getting rid
Yeah.
of.
I
people
already
who-
said earlier, I think it's fucking cringe when people talk about like killing landlords and eat the rich, like all that.
Yeah,
shit's
but
just really fucking weird.
what's cringe and what's legal enforcement? That's the real question,
Right, I
because
realize that.
enforcement
This
always
is, like, in my
implies
world.
force.
I don't necessarily think this will ever happen, but like this is absolutely.
No,
how I
but
prefer
should it
to
happen? I don't think it should ever happen that you get to someone in the government gets to decide what content of speech, above and beyond some kind of neutral content neutral principle such as no direct incitement of violence. You know, that what that is might be limited to that might require some interpretation, but it's not as broad as just like anything that's bad for society.
And the fact that nobody can
saying.
see cops, like cops is like a potential protected class. It's like
There you go.
You're inciting violence against agents of the state. You're challenging the authority of the courts anytime that you say a cop should be killed. Like, I mean, there's already some laws in some states that basically talks about like filming cops and trying to make that illegal, and they try to add in special protections. So that's what I'm saying. It's like whenever you think about a law. This is my libertarian sympathies coming out now. Whenever you think about a law, you have to think about who's going to enforce it and what's the extent of enforcement. Because if you don't have any kind of enforcement, then there's no point to even passing the fucking law.
Yeah,
so
that's
that
incredibly sorry.
But Connor, like I actually don't think I think the cops thing is a really good example, right? Because I don't think that's too far. There's a lot of dehumanizing language that's used to describe police on Twitter, right? People call them pigs, right? So this is obviously extremely dehumanizing. We just got through a year of violent attacks on police officers, many dead police officers. I don't think it's too far to say that people shouldn't be able to dehumanize police officers.
But can I?
Why
can I push back on
why not
this?
dehumanize anybody? Should it be a crime to dehumanize someone?
I
think that you would need to like look at the context, right? We need to figure out what exactly it means to dehumanize somebody.
Yeah.
And calling someone a pig and comparing them to an animal. That's pretty dehumanizing.
Let
You shouldn't be able to use that.
Let me address this. Let me address this directly, because here I'm literally fucking trapped between so many people right now. I am trapped probably between Prime's fucking perspective on law enforcement and fucking Lauren Southern's perspective on law enforcement. Okay. So like, I'm literally like, I'm trapped between the two of you, where it's like, if you made dehumanizing cops or criticizing cops illegal because they're a protected class, then all you're effectively doing is that you're proving that they actually are pigs and bastards, because they're above criticism and they can basically do terrible things to you, and you're not allowed to criticize them. So this is where like I bring up slippery slopes, because for instance, that it would be one thing if we were living in this like Star Trek universe where like everybody was nice all the fucking time and we were just bringing up like these little slippery slopes. But literally you can YouTube right now a Chinese man in China chained to a fucking desk because he criticized the cops for impounding his bicycle, and it was illegal. So they literally just held him there and just fucking interrogated the fuck out of him, basically while making fun of him. So these things that we're talking about, when you're talking about enforcement, when you're talking about law, when you're talking about literally punishing people, you have to take not your like Dooby, like your point is well taken, that, and I think Jangles brought this up as well, that you have to use a judicious and competent judgment in order to like affect positive change. But at the same time, whenever you come up with a law, you have to assume that your law will be used in the most fucked up way possible by the most fucked up people possible, and then you have to write the law so people can't use it that way.
I think one of the reasons I'm really confused here is that there's no...
Pisco, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Leave it, it's okay.
So yeah, there's no contradiction whatsoever between saying that free speech laws, like I like the United States laws. I don't think hate speech should be illegal. I want the laws for speech in the United States of America to be incredibly lax. And also, I think Twitter should be able to kick people off for way less than they do now. Like I think that they should be able to kick people off for hate speech. I think they should be able to kick people off for things that might be a little bit close to hate speech. Yeah, those two things do not contradict each other. I'm fine with Twitter banning anything that they want to ban within legal limits of, like, they can't ban all redheads or ban or all black people or anything like that, versus I don't want the government to be able to step in. It's the same reason I would argue that I don't think Section 230 should be repealed in the way that people like what's his name, Josh Hawley wants it, where you can't have any biased moderation or anything like that. I don't want the government to step in to say what Twitter should be, what Twitter has to allow on their platform. Those we can have those are two incredibly different conversations.
And imagine if Dooby's rule were applied the way he wanted it to, or existed. No more animal comparisons. You guys ever read the book Mouse, the comic? It's a comparison.
So good.
That's one of like the legendary animal. Every animal comparison has a purpose, and I think the Jews are mice, right? And the Nazis are
cats.
Yeah. And then like the Polish people are pigs, right?
Yeah.
So those comparisons, some might say, are dehumanizing, but in other areas they're art or they're criticism. And you saying, well, no, every animal comparison is inherently dehumanizing. First of all, we don't know that dehumanizing.
Wait, that's not what I said.
Or sorry,
There's actual research on
Not
dehumanization,
every
by the way.
and not every animal comparison.
I don't even agree that dehumanizing things should be banned. I mean, why should it be the case that things that dehumanize, whatever that means, should be banned?
Oh wait, I can tell you.
Why?
For on Twitter, again, this is on Twitter. Things so dehumanization is not just saying mean things about people. So we judge people on 2 dimensions: warmth, how likable and close to how their goals align with ours, and competence, how capable they are of achieving those goals. People are only dehumanized at the lowest of the low. And when I say dehumanized, I mean they've done research on this. They map the parts of the brain and monitor the parts of the brain that like light up with social recognition. And when they say dehumanized, they literally mean it. Like you look at a person, a human being, and the parts of your brain that recognize other human beings don't light up because you associate them with being very, very low in warmth. So their goals are just completely out of line with yours and also incapable.
Okay,
So
okay, but you just said, sorry, I thought I heard you say before that like you supported the Westboro Baptist Church's right to say what they were going to say. It is
yeah, again, legally, but on
Legally.
Twitter, no.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, my bad. So on Twitter, I'm with you. Like make a so for instance on Twitter, you know why shouldn't be able to make a rule that says only this is Republican Twitter and no Democrats are allowed? Do we all think that that should be allowed? That we have a space where there's only Republicans allowed or only Democrats allowed?
That's
I mean,
Parler, right?
Yes.
I think that's
Is it
totally
right?
fine.
No.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
yeah.
I wouldn't like it, but like if as long as it's not like legally enforced, yeah, definitely. Have it
Go
have
on
a space for
Reddit,
just
like,
Republicans.
Can I get a citation for the thing you just mentioned, Jangles? By the way, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, I can send it to you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I would say that like
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
hear on it.
I
Always
actually
be plugging.
probably more closely agree now with what Jangles is saying. It's like in my mind, yeah, I want to say like it should be illegal to like be a piece of shit, but obviously, like in the real world, that just it can't happen. Like there's no way to enforce it. There's no way to make a set of rules that work for it. Like it would just be impossible. It's like a perfect world thing that I think would be great, but obviously nobody thinks that that's ever going to be an actual existence.
Well, I don't think it would be a perfect world.
I don't even think it's desirable.
It's not desirable.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to tell me, well, I actually am omniscient and I know priorly what are going to be the harmful and non-harmful consequences of any speech that are going to happen. I mean, maybe in that universe, okay, I'll relent and say, okay, let's maximize well-being. You're appealing directly to my like philosophical underpinnings. But absent that being a concession, I think that we just live in a world in which we cannot entrust that decision-making authority to anybody.
No, I agree with you. I said, it's impossible.
Well, in Jangles, like you hit on something that's really fucking important. Like I think it's borderline fundamental to this entire conversation, this entire schism in American society is literally not viewing Republicans or conservatives or MAGA special people as human beings. And that's where like I brought up like my empathy argument about like if you literally thought that the election was stolen, then you would be justified in storming the Capitol. It's not so they can avert consequences. Literally, if they had shot more people during the Capitol, I wouldn't be upset basically. And if they arrested more people, I would actually be happy because the thing that they fucked with is so sacrosanct to me that I literally think you kind of need to do some scorched earth deterrent shit on it. However, that being said, if you want to make sure that that doesn't happen again, you have to understand their worldview. You have to see them as human beings. You have to see them as fallible, and you have to see them as improperly led by assholes. And that's where when we get back to Twitter and we get back to guillotine memes and fucking kill all landlords and all that kind of bullshit, that's where it's like, this rhetoric has consequences. The Roman royal, the Russian royal family, including girls, like 11 years old, were executed because they were part of royalty. So like dehumanization has consequences, and I'm not trying to avert legal or lethal consequences, but I am trying to say, how do we prevent this in the future? How do we get to the better world?
I gotta ask you, Connor, did you have a similar take when the BLM protests were going on, where we felt like we needed to sympathize with them and empathize with them and not dehumanize them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
just gotta make sure it's consistent because
no, actually, so no. This is actually I want to hit on this point because I think it's really important. The left, I think, including all the lefties here, will concede is terrible at rhetoric and optics. Like they're just awful.
Yeah.
But I'm an intellectually curious person. So when I saw smart people saying defund the police, I was like, that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But I saw smart people saying it. So I was like, what are they thinking? What are they saying? And then that's where I found out the steel man. That's where I found out the charitable arguments for dividing up responsibilities of law enforcement. And that's actually where me personally, like I kind of view myself as a bridge between conservative sphere and the lefty and liberal sphere, where I want to understand you. I'm not going to agree with you on everything. And as a matter of fact, we're probably going to scream at each other. Maybe not tonight, but in general, eventually we will scream at each other. But I have to take your good ideas, communicate them to the right, and I have to take the right's good ideas and I have to communicate to them to the left. And that's how I view my.
I just don't think it's very.
Hello, hi, thanks.
Oh, sorry.
So I allowed this conversation to go on because it was really, really fascinating. So we're not going to do ending closing statements. All the topics that we have today are like related. So we're just going to roll on. We'll do opening statements for the next one. Topic 2. The Capitol Police are facing harsh criticism for allowing Congress to be invaded. Many say that had the protesters been black or brown, the police would have used overwhelming force to prevent this from happening. Do you think this is? Do you think it's true that right-wing white protesters receive different treatment than others, or is this the result of law enforcement holding themselves back due to the anti-police climate that the BLM movement created? Should we be celebrating this level of restraint from the police or not? Are we putting law enforcement in an impossible position for saying by saying they are using both too much and too little force? I'm really curious as to where you all stand on this one. I'll have Connor and Pisco at the end for this one. All right, so we'll start with BadNick then.
Yeah. So this one I have kind of a lot of trouble with because I am pretty, I would say, mostly supportive of cops as a general rule. I do think that like this specific protest and the way that everything went down, there has to have been some kind of huge failing in the upper levels of things. Like the fact they weren't prepared for this, they didn't have National Guard pre-deployed, they didn't have more units on standby, anything. Something has to have gone wrong, and I don't necessarily think that it's true that this was on accident. I don't think there's any evidence to believe that this is like some sort of purposeful thing to like make it easier, but it's just so fucking weird to me, the idea that they just weren't expecting this in any way. On one hand, when it comes to like, should we be happy about the restraint? In any other situation, I would be happy about the restraint, but the fact that this was the Capitol building and the fact that we were very dangerously close to probably seeing members of Congress getting fucking murdered, no, there should not have been this much restraint in this situation. In any other situation, I might be pretty happy about the restraint, but in this one, holy fuck, dude, they needed to get this shit locked down. As far as whether they're in an impossible position, I think they are. I think it's really annoying because we just got off like this huge historic set of riots on overusage of police force, and then right at the end of it, here we have them not using anywhere near enough force. So they kind of got fucked from both sides.
Okay, let's go to Jangles.
Yeah, so we're gonna save a lot of the like statistics and numbers for to bring it during the discussion. I just want to point out that during the BLM protests in DC, so we're hopefully comparing apples to apples here. BLM was deemed as a threat. They were going to be there's a threat of violence for BLM versus they did not perceive a threat with the MAGA march that happened on January 6th. And I think a lot of that has to do with whether or not a cause is supporting a status quo or not. This is just a lot of research into like if you are an individual or a cause, and that cause is questioning or threatening the status quo, people are way more likely to ascribe dubious motivations, violent motivations to you, versus if you were to have the exact same like level of like bombastic rhetoric but supporting the status quo. So I think that is intrinsically linked to why I sincerely, in the bottom of my heart, believe that if this were a different protest with different looking people, mostly with the motivations of why they were protesting, yeah, absolutely, this would have been treated way differently. The police were incredibly lax with this. Like to assault, like it's not like they were hitting a Capitol building on its off day. They were trying to get into the Capitol building where people were, the legislature was in session. That is unprecedented. This is not burning down at Target levels like of violence here. That is threatening our democracy. But police were caught flat-footed, and I don't believe that for a second, because they weren't prepared to see this group of people as a threat, and I think that's inexcusable.
Dooby.
I actually don't think there's much evidence that the response would have been different. I think that I agree with was it Nick? That there had to be some massive fuck up, and I think that they've acknowledged that there were massive fuck ups. That requests for backup were ignored, that they weren't prepared, this sort of thing. But if I've seen like plenty of videos, right? Of police lines there. Right there's that picture that's been going around. This was DC when the BLM protest was happening, and there's like a line of police. Well, there were police lines there. They were just overwhelmed. Right, they were overwhelmed. These police were beaten with sticks and pushed into corners, and I think like even comparing the two, given that the BLM protests in DC happened after I think hundreds of BLM protests turned riots across the country. I think it's fair to say that they might have expected that there'd be some rioting, and there was. Right, the protests did go into the night. They did turn into riots, and shit was burned, and people were attacked. Right, so I think maybe the response was a little disproportional, but I think that was probably because they'd been observing a pattern from BLM that they hadn't seen from Trump MAGA types.
Okay. Next is Marcmunky. Mark?
Muted.
Fuck. Sorry. Yeah. Professional streamer. Sorry. Well, yeah, I heard a lot there from Dooby. Holy shit. Jangles pretty much took my argument. I was going to point out that there's really no point in talking about hypotheticals here. We know exactly what happened. The National Guard was on standby. There were more than enough police stationed all over DC when the DC protests happened. I refused to call it a riot. And they were attacking them with not just pepper spray and tear gas, but also rubber bullets, oftentimes shooting people who were just standing there, not charging into the fucking Capitol building. Meanwhile, we have Dooby talking about how they were overwhelmed by a smaller group of people. That's the thing that people seem to not realize. The amount of people that were there for the DC, I don't even know what to call it, insurrection, was a smaller number than the amount of people who were protesting in DC for the BLM protests, a lot of which comes from the fact that DC is a largely black city. So there were plenty of people who were homegrown who were protesting there, including people who were coming in from out of town. So to say that they were overwhelmed is a fucking joke. They had National Guard waiting in the wings for BLM, and then they had National Guard just like, oh, maybe we'll call them. Oh, I don't know. Everything's fine. And people like to talk about, how they got into this Capitol building. Let's talk about that. They broke through the windows in order to get to the doorways, to get to the doorknobs to let themselves in by having a riot shield and breaking through those windows. How the fuck did they get get those riot shields? It's because they took it off of a cop. They did not perceive them as a threat. And if we're going to go ahead and say that they're justified in some way and not perceiving them as a threat, that's a joke too, because there's been a large rise in right-wing white nationalist terrorism across this country, and they just refused to even bother to look into it. They didn't take it seriously because that's Jim Bob from the bar, man. That's my buddy. Oh, that's fucking Tex from the convention, man. Oh, we got together at the Harley Club. Like, no, that's their buddies. They don't give a shit about actually looking at them as a threat. But you see a big group of black people who are like, hey, please stop killing us. That's a threat, apparently.
Nocommentchick.
Yeah, thanks. Just right. I just got done writing my screed, so yeah, no, I got a lot to say about this. Like first of all, I mean, I'd kind of like to know when the last time lefties went after the democracy of the U.S., went after some kind of a, tried to disrupt a democratic process. I mean, you got the anarchists in Portland.
When Obama was elected,
they were going after the they were going after the courthouse and the WTO protests. They were going after the WTO, but I don't know when they've ever tried to stop a vote from happening or like block like, you know, the will of the American people. That's usually not what like the left really does. Like the kind of revolution the left is talking about is a fundamentally different one that involves the fucking means of production, not like, you know, cutting people off from the, you know, the ability to give feedback to their government through democracy. Usually that's not what the left wing is targeting here. I feel like there's a total double standard in the way, and it's more than just race that's going on here. I'm gonna say what I said to Destiny last Friday, and it's the second time we mentioned his name. Try not to do it a third time because he will show up if we do. About cops and MAGA protesters, and they're sort of having this weird resonance, this disturbing and scary to me resonance with the protesters. Like when they look at these protesters, they see their brother, they see their aunt, they see their, you know, sister, they see their niece, right? When they look at Black Lives Matter protesters, they're a little bit less familiar with who these people are, and they look at them with a lot more like trepidation and distrust, you know, like whether it's whether we're talking about like, you know, Black protesters or other people that showed up to, you know, protest, let's be honest, like police misconduct. You know, they take this a little bit personally and they tend to otherize, you know, these people. I just think it's really disturbing, and the cops aren't the only one who are doing these this underestimation. Like, I swear to God, I'm not trying to essentialize white straight male cis dudes or anything like that. I've got like white male cis friends, you know, but I feel like y'all are kind of underestimating this shit, and it feels like us marginalized people are like the only ones who are like blowing the whistle on this shit, because we've got a lot more skin in the game if fucking shit goes down, and by shit I mean our government. So yeah, I'm a little that's it. I'm done.
No, white males are terrible. Hey Drew, how are you doing?
I'm official white male right here. Yeah, cancel. Yeah, right. So there's a lot going on right now. Yeah, I guess I just say I don't think these are analogous events at all. I don't think you can compare events where you've had like months longs of protests, like bunches and bunches of protests where the cops are prepared for these things in different ways to like a sort of a spur of the moment riot. Like, I don't think that you can compare the use of force in those two situations. Yeah, and I can get more into that later. I just don't think it's a fair comparison. I also just don't like the armchair psychoanalysis of the cops that's going on right here about how they have some super secret bond to these people. Like, I would remind people that there were some heroic ass cops like fighting off a fuck ton of people to save our officials. They killed a woman to defend them. One of the cops has died. And I also like this point that somehow the cops were simultaneously not overrun and also so overrun that they had the riot shields taken from them to smash windows. That's a pretty fantastic contradiction you've got going on right there. Unless you're suggesting that they were literally handed riot gear to break into the Capitol, which seems pretty conspiratorial to me. It seems like you've got some weird, there's a lot of weird shit going on here about this event. I appreciate the sentiment. I understand that like we don't want misapplication and unfair use of force and a discrepancy between use of force of different populations. That would be wrong. I just don't think this is a fair example of that.
Okay, Connor.
So, I mean, there's a lot, and again, I feel completely fucking trapped. It's actually really painful for me because I want to be charitable, but I also, you know, I want charity extended to me. So for instance, I think it's normal. I was a police. For those of you who don't know, I was a law enforcement officer for 4 years. When I had Jim Bob in his truck, and he said I have a concealed weapons permit, and he notified me that, and his hands were at 10 and 2. I was at complete ease because I basically knew that if I was getting the shit kicked out of me on the side of the road, Jim Bob in his fucking pickup truck with his concealed weapons permit was going to be the first person to stop and probably kill the person who was beating the fuck out of me. So I think it's okay to acknowledge that there's probably an overlap between conservatives, law enforcement, and conservative sympathy. I don't think we need to fight this vociferously. Now, there are progressive cops, there's lefty cops, there's liberal cops, but let's be real. It's probably like a 2 to 3. It's a 2 to 1 ratio at least, right? Okay, so let's just concede that there might be some sympathy between cops and conservatives. Then finally, I think that underestimating the threat is probably accurate. And the reason why underestimating the threat was accurate, intentional or not, was because you literally had cops getting beaten with blue line American flags. You literally had cops getting beaten with American flags. So most cops are patriots. They love their country. They believe in the Constitution. They want to support their country. So they would never see, basically somebody using an American flag or a blue line flag. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the American flag with a thin blue line in the middle of it to beat them with. So I think there was probably an underestimation on an individual level that basically, but that doesn't matter. Actually, because when push came to shove, the cops started doing their jobs, which was beating the fuck out of people, protecting fucking members of Congress. One of the cops was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. There's videos of cops being trapped in doorways and pinned and crushed by protesters. There was and then there was the cop, I forget, I think it's like Eugene Goodman, who literally saw that there were senators and Congress people who were trapped, who weren't able to make it to a safe space, and he literally fainted, and then fainted, FEINTED, and then dragged the crowd away from members of Congress specifically so they wouldn't be killed. So one of the frustrating things, and I'll try to be brief, I'll try to wrap it up in the next minute, was people questioning the physical bravery or the moral bravery of the cops who were on Capitol Hill. I won't do that. What I would question is actually the competence and intelligence of the higher level administration and chain of command. So it's not the individual cop. The individual cop might have been there and he's like, we have 300,000 fucking people here, or however many fucking people are here. This is terrifying. And they still did their job. What did happen though was a captain, a lieutenant, a deputy chief, a chief said, the MAGA people aren't going to do shit. I'm not going to sufficiently staff, and I'm also not going to sufficiently call for backup for this event. So rather than attacking the individual morality or the individual virtue of the law enforcement officers on the ground, who I largely think acquitted themselves fairly well, what I would question is the competence, intelligence, and threat assessment of the higher level administrators who were responsible for this event.
Pisco.
Thank you. On the first question, whether or not this was a proportional response, the answer is almost certainly no. It should have been much harsher than what we saw on January 6th. Why? Why could I possibly say that? Someone was killed, after all. Let's not mince words about what this was. This was a coup attempt. For those of you who are equivocating about that, or like sort of having this discussion about whether or not this was a coup attempt, or maybe you think, along with Scott Adams on Twitter, that because it was unsophisticated or unlikely to succeed, it's therefore not a coup attempt, I think you are deluded. A coup attempt, there's various definitions, but one of which is the illegal or overt attempt by elites within the state apparatus to unseat the government. That is clearly fulfilled here with the involvement of Donald Trump and his paramilitary or militia supporters who were at this rally. It was an insurrection. It was an act of domestic terrorism, and required the harshest possible response by the government, especially at a moment in which they were certifying the results of a free and fair election. So to answer the question about proportionality, no, the response should have been much harsher. I am surprised that so few people died in this incident. I don't want to see dozens and dozens of people dead, but it just is a reality that we cannot let. I spoke with someone earlier before this week about, well, they shouldn't have killed the woman, right? The people in the Capitol cannot be allowed to occupy this area. They can't. I don't care what, whether or not you think that she was dangerous or anything like that. At a certain point, someone who's crawling through a window to get at a place where potentially elected leaders are, they need to be stopped. The question, I noticed something that was said by, I think, Drew, about whether or not the cops were overrun. They were unquestionably overrun. Unquestionably. I don't think there's any dispute about that. I wouldn't be too sure with Conorpoints. I know that he wants to defend individual cops on the scene. I think a lot of them did their job admirably. One of them died, or I think now two have died from what happened. But there are already over a dozen investigations, I think, into the Capitol Police. 2 have been suspended already. I think there might have been 1 arrest so far. So this has been a total debacle from top to bottom. The leaders of these agencies and police forces have quit or been fired. And with respect to the difference in response between BLM protesters and the rioters at Capitol Hill, I think proof is in the pudding. You see the response in Lafayette Square and you see the response in Capitol Hill. Someone explain that difference. You say it wasn't foreseeable, Drew. It was totally, eminently foreseeable this was going to happen. For weeks, we knew that January 6th was a big, important date. More notice, I think, than the BLM presence in Lafayette Square. So I don't want to hear these, I think, shameful arguments that the response was as good as it could be, or that somehow there's some neutral principle that distinguishes either response.
So before you respond, I know I'm supposed to do this before we like in between subjects, but I always fucking forget. Hey guys, follow me if you haven't followed me yet. We have these conversations 6 days a week. This is one of my walk on my invite only panels where we have big brains coming on to discuss big brain topics. If you're enjoying this so far, please give me a follow. We have other invite only panels that you'll see throughout the week. And beyond that, we have walk-on panels where audience members like you, yes, you can be involved. So if any of that interests you, please give me a follow. Beyond that, if you are enjoying this content, give me a sub to this channel. That's the only way we can keep this content coming towards you on such a regular basis, right? And we bring a whole lot of content. So if you find this valuable, please give me a sub. If you have a Twitch Prime, Prime Gaming, Amazon Prime, you can support the channel without costing yourself a dime. So please consider using that on this channel. Beyond that, donate bits, donate subs. And also we have a PayPal button below the screen. If you scroll down, click that button if you want to cut Bezos out of the picture altogether. He's only the second richest man now, and let's keep him that way. Maybe keep his ego in check. So everyone, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Yes, and if you can, give me a follow and also definitely give me a sub if that's a possibility. All right, go ahead, Drew.
Yeah. So I need to defend myself a little bit here because Pisco just kind of attacked me here. I need to be extremely clear. This was an insurrection attempt. Fuck those people that attacked the Capitol. Like, completely un-American. Fuck you if you think you're a conservative and attack the fucking Capitol. You don't get to attack the institutions that we try to uphold and then pretend like you actually care about those institutions. So fuck those people. Number two, the response was not as good as it should have been. To be extremely clear, there should have been way more force. My only point is that I don't think that it has anything to do with the race of the people that were there. I think everyone was genuinely shocked by this event, and people that pretend that this was totally foreseen, you're deluding yourself. This was shocking. People
I don't think it was shocking.
It was shocking. Like, look, do not like. I'm sorry. Like, I understand. Like, I get Trump's rhetoric's terrible. I get that.
Wait, have you got all the facts? Though? Like, do you know about the parlor? Like, this has been set up since November or December. Wait, I'm not sure. I mean, do you have all the facts on this before saying this?
I was writing on my personal Facebook page like a week before this incident happened that there are going to be people who are going to try to inflict a coup d'etat in the Capitol on January 6th.
Okay, so to be clear, if there are facts that I'm unaware of, I'm happy to shift my perspective. Okay, so to be clear, so there's no reason for the aggression. I just didn't want to dunk on you over facts that you might not have. Yeah. So if I don't have any particular facts, I understand that. And if for some reason we have those facts and those facts were not relayed to the Capitol Police for whatever reason, that is a failing on their part, to be clear. So
relayed, you mean they didn't investigate it at all because they didn't take it seriously?
Yeah, they're not.
Wait. Do you know that, Mark, or are you saying
what else explains it? Explains it?
Wait. If they weren't aware of it, look.
How could they not have been aware of it? Congress.
Look, here's the thing. Either they didn't do their jobs in leading up to the thing, or they didn't do their jobs when they were there.
Agreed. Okay, look, they should have, whatever the case, they should have found a way to know about this if this was an organized attempt prior. Okay, period. I'm just saying, saying that they knew about it and didn't investigate enough. I'm not really sure what
they know about the Black Lives Matter.
We all know this and they don't, and they're the police. There was a failing on their part.
Okay, so I need to address that.
I'm some fucking streamer in Flint, Michigan. I'm nowhere near DC. I knew this was coming weeks in advance. I've been calling this. I've been blowing the whistle on this for months now. That Trump's rhetoric was going to lead to mass violence leading up to the inauguration, and it's going to happen again. They're already talking about it.
Yeah, fair warning, everyone. It's happening again next week. Get ready.
Okay. Okay. I need it.
Yeah. Can
I jump?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Thank you. So this is what I wanted to say. Basically, this gets back to damned if you do and damned if you don't. I'm not going to disagree with the fact that there's a failure here. Almost every, especially the DC police, especially the Capitol Police, nearly every major metro police department that has more than a few hundred officers has a intelligence unit, and the intelligence unit largely does like open source investigations, basically paying attention to social media and all that kind of shit. But what I want to point out, is that so Pisco, your point about individual cops basically not acquitting themselves well, being investigated, and even some of them being
it's a mixed bag, right? I'm not going to
administratively. Yeah, but I mean, this is what I'll say about cops, which I think is true of infantrymen and soldiers as well, and Marines. So people who serve in the military and people who serve in law enforcement, it's literally 50-50 split down the middle. It's 50% the best, most ideal, awesome human beings you've ever met in your entire life, and it's 50% shitbags. It's just true. So I'm not surprised that they caught some shitbags doing shitbag shit. Okay, but the point being that they should have known, but these decisions are made at the top. So basically, the administration would have been responsible for staffing. The administration would have been responsible for coordinating with other law enforcement agencies. The administration would have been, the administration would have been coordinated with responsible for coordinating with the National Guard. So here's a question that like you and I can't answer. Was it incompetence? Was it malevolence? Like who fucking knows? But my point being that like, if I'm a cop, if I'm a beat cop, I show up to work the next day for shift because I need a fucking paycheck. So I'm not making the decision on whether or not I have a few hundred people or a few thousand people to help me secure the Capitol.
Right. Well, so I feel like
can I just say really quickly, do you think it was a good response? What happened during the BLM protests in DC? Was that a proper response?
Well, okay. So here's an interesting question that I wanted to bring up as well. So during the BLM protests, allegedly, more property was protected, or at least more important property was protected, and there was less loss of life. So what lane do you want to pick here?
Wait, there's no hypocrisy here. There's absolutely no hypocrisy. With respect to there's less loss of life because they're not beating Capitol police officers to death, and they're not trying to attack senators. So,
let me ask Mark.
They weren't showing up with the fucking gallows calling for Mike Pence's head.
Yeah, the protesters were less violent lunatics.
They were asking people to not kill them.
Okay, hold on. So
and they were shot with rubber bullets.
Question. You can have here's my question. You can have a show of force. You can have thousands of security forces on the ground with less lethal munitions, tear gas, gas canisters, and all that kind of stuff, and that can prevent loss of life and property destruction. So here's my question. So it kind of sounds like you're saying it's inappropriate in both circumstances. It's inappropriate when they overuse less lethal munitions during the Black Lives Matter protests, and it's also inappropriate when they underuse.
They were over punitive and over zealous and way out of proportion in both cases. On one side, they were way too harsh for the Lafayette Square protests. They should not have cleared that square. They should not have, and they were way under enforcing of this protest. So both things can be true, and there's no hypocrisy.
Yeah. Okay. The response should have been something in the middle. And it should have been the same response for both.
Can I just say, as a cop, there's no right way to beat a citizen's ass. Like seriously, like there's no correct way to enforce violence on a human being.
Talking about that. They're talking about actually providing some sort of security response rather than sitting there and going, "Oh shit, I got overwhelmed because I didn't actually take this seriously because these are the type of people that align with me politically."
Who's saying that though? The beat cop or the administrator? Who are you calling out right now?
A little bit of both.
Do you have to pick one?
Yeah, but to be clear, there were 1,400 police officers there, right? So it's not like they were like on light duty. I mean, obviously, it seems like there should have been more. They should have more equipment, more backup. Yeah. But it's not like they just didn't have any police there. There were over 1,000, right? So they were just overwhelmed. Yeah, obviously
I'll
not
jump
enough.
in here.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's like you can say any quantity of number. The problem is it enough or is it not enough, or what percentage of enough is it? So that the absolute number of cops is really neither here nor there.
Okay,
And did
the only
cops
thing that
actually take it seriously enough?
the
Because
the
I
only
mean,
thing that
again, I'm going to
I'm
point
gonna
this
kill
out.
my-
It wasn't even the fact that they didn't like there weren't enough of them. It was the fact that the response to Black Lives Matters people mostly being peaceful. You can look it up. They were mostly peaceful. The largest majority were peaceful. We're getting shot at with rubber bullets. They didn't even bring out the rubber bullets for these guys, and they went in and smeared shit all over the Capitol walls.
Okay, but do you want me to run from my police line to go retrieve less lethal munitions because this is my point. So the point is fine that they were unprepared for one situation and they were
point is there's
overzealous
a
in another
double standard.
situation. The only thing that I'm trying to point out here, and it's a really simple point, and I just it's food for thought. Okay, if you see cops in gas masks wearing riot gear, rolling up in tanks, and they say, this is an unlawful assembly, please disperse. And those people don't disperse. And then cops start shooting them with rubber bullets and hitting them with tear gas and beating them with batons and tasering them or whatever. You're going to say it's too much. And then if cops get overrun and nearly fucking killed, then you're going to say it's too little. So all I'm trying to point out is, you don't have to sympathize or empathize with this position, and I don't really give a fuck. I'm just saying that as a cop, there's no correct way that a citizen is going to be like, thank you for beating me the exact right amount. It's just not going to happen. So it's a very simple point.
Is this the Goldilocks fallacy? Is that what this is called, actually?
Yeah. Beat my ass the exact right amount.
Just kidding.
It's not going to happen.
No one's even saying that.
I want to get in on a little bit on Connor's side because he's kind of like, I feel like he's getting ganged up on a little bit. But I was not a cop. I almost was, and I support cops. But the thing that sucks about this situation, in regards to the individual cops on the ground, I largely believe I'm right there with Connor. I think this is a failure in the administrative level. But the problem with the situation when you're looking at when it happened, whether the administration for some reason knew it was going to get this bad and underprepared on purpose, if you want to be that kind of conspiracy guy, or whether they didn't expect it to get this bad, if that's what you want to believe, when they're already there, the cops are on the ground at the Capitol and people are getting riley. The problem that you have is, A, deploying all these extra cops with non-lethals takes a lot of time and it's pretty difficult, and you can't just have people leave their line to run back to their car or whatever to get their shit and come back. That doesn't work. And the other thing is, there's the concern that if they try to fight back too hard, it exacerbates the situation. So like the cop he was talking about, Eugene, who was in the stairwell that led all these people away, he did just the right amount. He like swung at a guy and then started running. If he had decided to stand his ground and start swinging or shooting, all those hundreds of people behind him aren't going to turn around and run away. They're probably going to fucking charge his ass and kill him. Like when that woman was shot in that room, I am surprised it didn't rile that crowd up more. And to be honest, the only reason it didn't is because that wall was so barricaded. There was only that tiny window to get through. If it was more open and they shot that woman, I guarantee you that whole fucking crowd is charging in at those Secret Service agents who are in there. So there's a problem of administration fucked up and underprepared them to start with. And then the cops on the ground, what the fuck are they supposed to do about it? Like they were fucked from the start.
Yeah, should they just start mag dumping into the crowd? Like, I mean,
to
on
be
some
fair,
level,
to be
there's a
fair,
sick
they had
part
to
of me that
discharge
thinks,
their
yeah.
firearms in that situation. Like they were basically like protecting
That was
the
Secret
Congress.
Service. Yeah. By the way, that
yeah.
was
So
Secret
they
Service.
were backing all. They didn't have any choice there. It's not like they
No,
could consider like less lethal means.
That needs to be said. So Bad Nick, you just said that, I'm surprised they actually shot at this woman. Are you saying that was not the right
I'm
call?
not surprised they shot. I'm surprised the people in the crowd behind her when they got shot didn't try to push
So
forward.
was it the right call or the wrong call? I mean,
It
if you're
was
going to take
absolutely the right call. That woman
It
was
was the
not-
right call.
I won't
So
speak
you're
ill of her, but
you're
that was the right call.
I'll defend that shit all day.
You're
What am I
completely.
doing?
You're
So hold on.
completely.
One second. We'll get right back to it. Hold on to that. Someone donated $10, saying Prime, you need to challenge your guest Connor. As a veteran, some soldiers ought to be better than other soldiers, but I would never expect that any of them would aid any enemy combatants while we're actively under attack. So
I don't know what that means.
uh,
He's saying shitbag cops helped people out.
yeah.
I don't know that. That's an assertion that Pisco made. I don't know that to be true.
Well, no, I'm
wouldn't
saying
say
that
they
there are
helped them out.
currently, it's confirmed that there are investigations into individual Capitol Police officers going on right now. And in particular states also, there are investigations into off-duty cops who have been involved in it. So I don't
Okay.
not
So-
making
so
fun of
let's- So let's clarify. Let's very specifically clarify this, because whoever said that, I want you to know that I'm taking your comments seriously. Okay, if an off-duty cop stormed the Capitol, then basically they might be thinking that they're upholding their oath, but they're actually violating it. And if they were killed in the attempt, I wouldn't care, because in my eyes, they are violating their oath to the Constitution of the United States. If a cop who was there, so for instance, I think there was like a video of like a cop like waving people to go a certain direction, like he was literally directing rioters like a certain direction or something like that. If they investigated that and they found out that that was nefarious, where the cop wasn't trying to like, you know, cordon people into another police line, he was literally trying to help protesters breach the fucking Capitol, then that dude should literally be thrown under the fucking prison. So I hope that clarifies that I actually agree with what you're saying.
Go ahead, Drew.
Can I ask a question? Oh,
No,
after
Drew
Joe.
was waiting.
So we finish,
Yeah,
and then we'll go back to you, Dooby.
Yeah, I was just clarifying that Pisco was. I think
Yeah.
he was kind of missing BadNicc's point. I think that they were actually talking past each other. I don't think that. I think Nick was just sort of expressing surprise that there wasn't more issues caused when he shot that woman. I don't think he was saying it was not justified.
But the
That's-
implication there, if what Nick is saying is that in any given situation, you know, take the average situation, in his professional opinion, people would have charged that cop, then really what he's saying is that the cop made the wrong choice, because if they all charged, right, it would have been a worse situation, right?
Well,
Except
so
in
here's-
his statement, he said that it was probably because there was not really a way for them to get through because it was the
Yeah.
window.
So,
I mean, like
the way that they took her out, what had happened was there was a window that she broke through. It was at 2 doors with barricades and then a window that she broke through. The windows going through. Had that barricade come down fully, and then they shot someone, I think, while I kind of understand that why they would have shot them, I think it would have been a lot fucking worse. They made the absolute right call. I'm 100% standing behind that agent. But
Yeah.
like I was saying, specifically with the guy Eugene who was in that stairwell and led them away, had he gone any harder or tried to make a stand, he'd be fucking dead right now. Like,
Okay,
there's
so
not a doubt in my mind.
So when people are criticizing the individual cops, I don't think they're criticizing the person who shot. I don't think they're criticizing Eugene, whoever the example. I forget the example. I think they're criticizing the kind of things that that Conorpoints is bringing up, which are like, there are allegations that some on-duty officers were like sending people to certain rooms where the people were, or opening things that they shouldn't have been opening, right? I'm not saying that is true, but there are investigations into that, and there are allegations of that.
The way that goes, the only thing I've seen of that so far was there was a Twitter video that some shitty news agency clipped 6 seconds out of some cops opening up a barricade. The problem is they cut out the following 20 seconds where you can
That's
see
not what
that
I'm
they were
talking
already
about.
on the yeah.
Yeah,
So I haven't seen.
What about the cop that was just sitting there going, "Hey, you're not allowed in here. Hey,
Well,
hey, you can't come in."
BadNick will have a
There's
response to
people
that.
walking by, and he's just like,
So what more
hey,
does he do?
no,
Does
he
he
shouldn't fight him and die, right?
20ing like a bunch of like armored protesters. Like some of these dudes are wearing fucking full on like body armor and shit. Like what is he gonna do? It's one guy versus 20 like crazy MAGA guys.
Well,
I
if
can't
you
exactly
take the
blame
threat
him.
seriously in the first place, you
That's
wouldn't
it.
have to worry about it
Exactly.
getting to that
That's
point.
which is why I
Yes.
say the administration is the major.
Is most. I agree. They're the organizers,
I
the top
agree
level
to an
people are
extent.
more to blame. I agree to a certain extent, but like, let's not just pretend that without knowing all the facts yet, that every individual officer is cleared of all charges.
Well,
I
let's-
agree.
to be
Which
clear,
is why
I
I
don't-
was,
I don't
which
think
is
anybody
why
said
I
that.
had the thing pulled up on my screen that showed that 84% of police officers supported Donald Trump in the
That doesn't-
2016
it's-
election.
okay, That
But-
says
okay,
that says
but-
wait,
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 that-
wait.
That's
My
Like,
majority.
just like it doesn't. It doesn't matter if they supported Donald Trump. It
Yes,
matters
it
if they were.
does.
No, wait, stop.
Because they're
no,
coordinated
stop.
with the
Dude, let me
people who
talk.
charged
If
on
you're-
the-
No, I'm not going to stop talking until you stop. Look, it doesn't matter if they supported Donald Trump. It matters if they were sympathetic to the fucking rioters in that particular instance. Just because they voted for Trump doesn't fucking matter. They were rioters. They don't give a fuck if they were holding Trump flags. That's what is at issue at this point. It's
They're
not
gonna
whether or
be
not they
can we
voted for Trump.
Can we address why 84% of cops
They're going to be
voted?
softer with the people that they're more likely to be politically aligned with. Are you fucking kidding me?
That's
Wait,
the
so
argument.
you say
Plus,
so you're
there's
saying that
another-
when
I'm
that
gonna need a
also-
citation for. I'm gonna need a citation for that, buddy.
I'll give you some.
agreed.
There was also reports of a lot of the off-duty cops and military people flashing their badges at them. So you don't think that affected the cops to make them be like, "Oh, that's my buddy, that's my guy." Yeah, it did.
Dude,
We see the results of that. There was
Dude,
no one at
we-
the Black Lives Matter protest who were doing that, and
we
they got
s-
treated like absolute shit.
We
point
see
is
the results of that.
Can
What the
we
fuck
talk
does
about
that
why
mean?
though?
terrorism seriously because it's killed more people around this country than Antifa ever will.
Right-wing
Can we
terrorism?
talk about why?
Sure. Like, look, if
Yeah.
right-wing terrorism is more of a threat, I don't particularly like. I fucking hate
But we don't
terrorists.
take it seriously.
Right.
I
That's
take it
the, that's,
seriously.
wait, the question is why the disparate responses, right? Why have it's undeniable, right, that it was a harsher response in Lafayette Square. Everyone
Sure.
agrees with that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So the question is why? If one thing is like, well, they knew about the BLM protest, they didn't know about this. That is debunked, right? That cannot be true because everyone and their cat had on their calendar 6th. The attempted coup happens on the 6th. People might have had their eyes closed.
No,
I did. I
I
certainly
think that's
did
a
not.
stretch.
Here, I
Yeah, that's a
promise.
stretch.
I don't think it's that much of a stretch. So
I don't think
what are,
that's.
so
no
what are
one's
other
calling it a
different?
coup.
Okay. What are other? I was calling it a coup before the 6th,
You
and
were.
I knew it was happening.
Great.
So, the other
Yeah,
so if foreseeability is a neutral ground that we are all rejecting, I don't know if we are. Another neutral ground might be, well, because they're racist or because they have different political affiliations. So you have to explain the difference in the response.
So we
Can I
got
please-
Dooby. Dooby's been waiting very patiently. Connor, I see your hand. You don't have to like shake it at me. I get it. But go ahead, Dooby.
I feel like I'm just what I wanted to ask earlier was there are people in here implying that the police were just like held back. You know, they were friendly with these people. They saw them as their buddies, and they recognized them when they saw them. I mean, first off, like 80% of BLM protesters were white. So I don't think the crowd looked all that different. To be honest with you,
They did.
We're
They
just
did.
gonna
Oh,
go off
no,
like
no,
race.
no, just
No,
let's
please,
not make
no,
it
wait.
just about race. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just finish.
You're good.
And secondly, I don't think that there's any evidence that like I think like jumping from hey, they weren't prepared well enough to they weren't prepared well enough because they're racist and they were white people and they just thought there was no like that's a massive fucking leap. And bringing up that 84% of police supported Donald Trump. I mean, we just got through an entire year of defund the police and fuck the police and all these like come on that the Democrat Party was had latched
The
on to.
Democratic Party, you mean?
No, they
Did you say
didn't.
the
No, they
Democrat? I'm
didn't.
sorry,
Yes,
you're talking about the
they did.
Democratic
Biden-
Party? I thought you said Democrat first. Is it the Democratic
Well, yeah,
Party
I'm sorry,
that
the
you're talking about?
Democratic
Democratic
Party, whatever you'd like to call it. Yes.
Okay,
it's
no,
got
but the
a
Democrat-
C at the end, yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's.
Okay, so the Democrat Party
I think
police.
making that leap is I think it's too far. I think obviously they're fuck ups, right? I don't think it makes any sense to say now the individual cops on the ground, they're all racist. So they saw these white people and they were they recognized their faces and whatnot. And I think someone implied earlier that they had riot shields as if the cops were giving them riot shields. No, we saw how they got the riot shields. They beat the shit out of the cops and took them, right?
You saw in one instance how they got those riot shields. That doesn't show you that all the riot shields that were procured were done through those things.
even
Like, no,
know
so
that
here's
they
the
were-
thing. Here's the thing. I think that race is a bit of a canard here because if we're going to focus on it and say it's just about race, then yeah, that's probably not literally true. But it's race
mixed
combined
motives.
with culture, right? If
Yeah.
there were white people there at the BLM protest, if it was 80% white, I haven't seen those figures, but I'll trust you that that's true. They're probably fucking blue-haired SJWs like me. When a cop sees me versus when a cop sees like fucking Joe MAGA, like there's gonna be a difference in what he thinks. And like if he thinks, I don't know, this might be one of those Antifa cat girl super soldiers that's gonna come and kick my ass, I better be real careful with this chick.
Well, no, that's so right though. Like, it's not all one thing and all another.
Yeah, right. It's exactly.
It's mixed motive. There's different reasons, and I think race is a reason. And I can't prove it with science, but I suspect.
I can prove it with facts.
Fuck!
I can prove it by showing this article here.
Come
Oh
on.
my god.
I just
Okay,
wanted to
dude,
Connor.
This
guys,
doesn't
I'm
prove
up-
that.
you're about to give me
I need to
a
jump
right.
in, please. I'll give you all a cookie.
Jangle, go ahead.
All right, I do not have science that says that every single cop there is 100% racist. I don't have that. What I do have is what I think research that points to a nuanced position that doesn't paint all individual cops as horrendous people. Okay, this is what the research that I have. Cops tend to be high in both system justification, which means they want to support the status quo. Kind of makes sense if you're a police officer because you're enforcing laws, and they're also high in social dominance. So basically, they like hierarchies. They like it, people are on the top enforcing laws on people on the bottom. That's not necessarily an evil position on its own. Even I think you can be a decent person and still want some sort of like social hierarchy. All right. So I'm not painting any cops as bad
But
here.
little
So when you
dudes come up
see a
and,
protest
I
like
just
BLM,
naturally
which
am like,
regardless of
little
how many white
dudes.
people comprise it, that is there to challenge the status quo, you are more likely to see them as more of a threat versus someone like MAGA, who is supporting the current president, who is supporting a literal return to when America was great. I don't think it's bad to say that they're supporting the status quo, okay? And this isn't all or nothing. The two options aren't, well, I'm either going to shoot the first person that comes up on the Capitol steps, or I'm going to direct them in with the whatever those flashing lights are, guiding airplanes in. All right, those aren't the only two positions. It could be as simple as you're just a little bit slower to recognize when the crowd has been boiled up to the point that they're likely to engage in violence. It could be something really small like that. And I think there is a combination of individual cops just making decisions that are a little bit slower based on the crowd that was there, on top of the incompetence of the higher ups. It's not an all or nothing proposition. There probably
that's
were
fair.
there probably were lots of cops there who were absolutely 100% in favor of that MAGA march. They wanted to see them succeed, but they did their jobs. They might have just done a little bit slower than they would have if it was something like a BLM protest or an Antifa protest or whatever. They probably would have acted a lot faster.
I need to back up the lefties here.
And do that in one quick second. Hold on, you will be the first person I go back to. Mark, you're heading out. Thank you for being here, Mark. Really appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, buddy.
Yeah, it's a good time, and I was glad to put some good facts out there and talk to
We'll catch you
everybody
next time, man.
and have a good night.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have a
Good night, man.
See ya.
See ya.
All right. Go ahead, Connor.
Okay. So basically what I want to do is like Jangles just fucking murdered the fucking point that I was going to make. So this is where I think we don't have to, I can, as the ex-law enforcement officer, I think my instinctive reflexive reaction is going to be defensive. But at the same time, it's true that what is it? So Black Lives Matter is literally saying that the system is racist, whether or not it's interpersonally racist or systemically racist. They're saying that. They're saying that some people for Black Lives Matter are saying that the way to solve this is by chopping up the institution of policing and redirecting funding to other institutions. So isn't it kind of obvious that cops would see people who had that worldview as natural opponents when it comes to physical violence, protests, riots, all that kind of stuff? I don't think I'm making massive logical leaps here.
But then by your own definition, it is racist, right? So because if it derives ultimately from a race-based conflict, then it's racist, right?
No.
Are we talking about
so.
systems? Hold on, before you derail me, let me finish the point. Fucking supporting the lefties here too. So if I'm a 30-year-old, cop veteran, served in the military, now I'm serving as a police officer, and I see Drew with his beard and his stocky shoulders, and he's walking up to me with a Blue Lives Matter flag, or the blue line flag, am I going to count him as a threat? No. If he starts punching me in the face with the flag, am I going to count him as a threat? Yeah. But was I slower to react? Was I less likely to take him seriously as a threat? Yeah, because I do have some level of kinship with him. And then if I see Nocommentchick and 85% of a crowd is white, but they all have blue hair, some of them have black outfits on with masks covering their face, and they're screaming that all cops are bastards, am I going to be more ready to go for a fight? And I think the obvious answer is yes. So I kind of all I want to do is I just want to take down the natural defensiveness, because I think what's going on is conservatives are hearing that conservatives are bad people and they support Donald Trump and they're pieces of shit, and cops are pieces of shit because they were slow to react to this fucking riot. But I don't think we need to go that far. We can just concede this point that if Nocommentchick comes swinging at me and I'm a cop, she's obviously the enemy.
I'm gonna get
if Drew's walking up to me with a blue line flag, he might be my friend.
So
hang on,
I should get a Blue Lives Matter shirt is what you're saying. Okay, I got it.
No, but
and I was trying to say the blue line flag, the American flag that's black and white with the blue line.
Right.
Okay, so Conorpoints, by your own, exactly what you're saying, right? On the part of the protesters who are in the Capitol Hill protesters, they are engaged in just as incendiary conduct, if not more incendiary, than the Black Lives Matter protesters.
More,
right?
Yeah.
But you're saying the difference in response comes down to a normative prior about just the general political ideology, right? But that political ideology is informed by an opinion on the racial conflict. And if it's all derived from a norm about some racial conflict in the plausibility of that claim, then it's based inherently on some sort of racist or racism or racial claim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but are we okay? But so here's the thing. Like, I have no problems with systemically racist arguments or whatever. I have no problems with saying that like the system disproportionately fucks over Black or brown people. I have no problems with saying that we set these systems up and there's basically like historical context that feeds into these systems. I'm also okay with the assertion that basically like these systems can perpetuate forever and still be like systemically racist while maybe not interpersonally racist.
Yeah, so I think we all acknowledge that it's not.
Okay,
yes.
so are you saying interpersonal, or are you saying systemic, or are you saying a blend?
I think that line that you just drew between those two is really arbitrary. I don't see a big kind of difference or one that's worth mentioning. It's a distinction to me without a difference. I think there's
a huge difference because for instance, I see Drew and I see Drew getting riled up, and I think probably a few years ago I would have gotten riled up. If you would have walked up to me and called me a fucking racist, what you're doing is you're calling me a bad person. And I'll say, no, I'm not a racist. I have a friend. His name's PrimeCayes. He invites me on his panel show sometimes, and we're boys. And if he invited me out for a beer, regardless of his sexuality or whether or not he was cisgender or whatever his race was, I would happily go get a beer with my friend PrimeCayes. I'm not interpersonally racist.
Okay, so it's relevant insofar as people think it's relevant, and insofar as people internalize the accusation differently. Perhaps it's different as society deems it differently. But at bottom,
are you calling me a bad person because I'm racist?
Right. So I see where you're going with that, and I accept it. But all I'm trying to say is saying that it is racist and racism that's driving it could be completed by either an interpersonally racist police body or a police body that you acknowledge has some sort of prior on a racial conflict that we would consider racist.
Well, let me bring up this question, and then I swear I'll shut up and stop dominating the conversation. Okay, so let's put terrorist attacks aside, because almost there's very few conservatives or right-wing people who are going to support right-wing terrorism. Okay, very few in the United States. Okay, so let's put right-wing terrorism aside. When was except for who?
Sorry. Never mind. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's parse out right-wing terrorism. When was the last conservative riot?
Just now.
Right.
There was one.
Is this a trick question? I'm serious. Is this a trick question? What the fuck are we doing here?
No, I'm asking.
They were storming state capitals in Kansas.
It's pretty clear that Connor was like,
No, I'm literally asking.
Are you trying to trip on a rake and hit yourself in the face? What's going on here? I don't understand.
Okay, no comment check. Let me clarify. Let me clarify.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me clarify.
Okay,
Jesus Christ.
Sorry. I just didn't understand.
Okay. Yeah. So can I clarify? So besides the storming of the Capitol, when was the last right-wing riot?
We don't count this big, really dangerous, possibly democracy ending thing. We don't count this one. I get it. I see how it is.
I have a point.
Yeah. So in Kansas, right? They recently, I think, maybe even the same day, they stormed the Capitol building of Kansas, I believe.
Hey, what about every single police riot that went on this summer? How about that? Are we going to always blame the BLM protesters for that? Or the police have some culpability for fucking shooting goddamn shit at people's faces when it's supposed to go on the ground and bounce up and hit you in the knee and just injure your knee, right? You know, do they have no culpability in this? Is there never
I didn't.
Wait, that's just
to be upsetting.
Like,
I was
Connor,
actually.
Connor,
Dooby, do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, I mean, you asked when the last right-wing riot was, right? The police shooting rioters, BLM rioters, or Antifa rioters isn't really a good answer to that, right? I don't think
I gave a good answer, right? In Kansas.
No, not really. No, not really. I don't think we can.
Why not?
I can tell you in a second. I don't think we can classify the police responding to rioters as like a right-wing riot. Right? That's not really fair. I think what Connor's getting at is like I mentioned earlier, we've just gotten through an entire year of protests and riots from BLM, and I even hesitate to call them like BLM, right? Because realistically, these are I think primarily like Antifa types that go out there and cause trouble, right? Yeah, Antifa
As
types
opposed
would
to
go out there and cause
as
trouble.
opposed to fa types.
Please.
Is that what
Oh
we're talking
my
about?
God.
As opposed to fa
Wait,
types.
please.
Antifa. Okay,
Wait,
so
let him- just let him
anti-fascist.
talk.
I like that.
Let's say the
Please.
full word
So
anti-fascist. Can we
please.
say
Oh
it? Can
my
we try
God.
to say
So
it?
it makes
Anti-fascist.
so it makes sense.
We'll pronounce
So
it
it
one
makes sense.
syllable at a time.
So it makes
Anti-fascist. Can you
sense.
say that?
That's
Just
fine.
let him talk.
And
I just wanna hear
anti-fascist
you say the
fascists
word
went out
one
there and
more
beat
time.
people up for disagreeing with
The
me.
full word. Say the full
Everyone.
word.
Hey, whoa, stop. Thank you. Let him answer, please. Go ahead, Dooby.
Okay, so I think what Connor's getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, we just had an entire year of protests and riots from a certain side of the political spectrum. So it makes sense that when those people went to the Capitol, they would have expected riots, maybe had a larger presence there. And what do you know? That protest went into the night. It did turn into a riot, and they burned shit down. They pulled down the statue. They did all kinds of crazy shit, right? So yeah, I think it's fair to say that the police were expecting violence when the BLM protests happened. Not because BLM is the organization, but because I think there are a lot of like
Wait.
anti-fascist types who got there and caused trouble.
This is an incorrect frame of looking at this, Dooby. Because one is you're wrong on the premise that the right-wing insurgents or militia groups don't do riots. They do them with some regularity. I've given you a couple of examples that you can't
know
just
that
brush off.
happened the same day.
Well, there's also been storming of the Capitol in Michigan.
There's over 500 BLM protesters and riots in the
Okay,
last year.
this is the other problem: is you assume that the numerosity of riots is the relevant factor we should look at. Numerosity isn't the problem. Magnitude and scope of danger and threat. That's the problem.
Malignancy is what we're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Christ, I literally wasn't trying to trigger you with this
No,
question.
I'm
literally
no,
pitting
stop.
your point.
Fun,
I was
okay?
literally supporting your
No,
point.
I'm talking to Dooby about his, I think, framing. I think he's taken your point and gone somewhere else with it. If that's fair.
Okay,
I'm not trying to...
instead of asking a question, can I just articulate my point?
Go.
Okay,
for
so
it,
I'm
please,
going to
for the love
articulate
of
my
God.
point. Okay, so rather than asking a question, here's what I was driving at. So you had the Michigan protest or riot or storming of the Capitol or whatever with people with firearms. I think a few months ago, you also had like some militia members show up to some Capitol, basically to protest with firearms and all that kind of stuff. People weren't killed. There weren't Molotov cocktails thrown. They didn't break the fucking windows. They literally showed up with fucking guns and they left. Okay.
Charlottesville.
So 2016. So literally the last time.
Why? Why would that matter? If you have a history, so we forget about terrorist acts 4 years after they happen, or sorry, riots.
Are you being purposefully obtuse, or are you
No.
waiting?
Yes. I feel
Okay.
like
Turn that
No, I'm
question
not.
around, Connor.
No,
Jesus
okay,
Christ. You
I'm
don't
trying to
ask
get
that
to the
after tripping over
fucking
your dick
point.
like that. Jesus Christ, dude.
Okay.
I'm not trying to embarrass you. I swear to God, dude. I swear to God.
I swear to God, no comment check. I am not trying to upset you. I'm literally trying to articulate a point.
I'm passionate. There's a difference.
How about the attempt to get Governor Whitmer? You're saying that.
Oh my God. Okay, can I just talk about
Yeah.
perception then? Jesus Christ. Like seriously, I don't. Okay, no comment check. I understand that passion does not mean you are incorrect. Okay, so that's something that I get yelled at for all the time. I get very passionate, but I don't feel like I'm incorrect at all. Pisco and no comment check. I'll take your fucking 6 goddamn examples about right-wing people being fucking assholes, and I'll concede that they existed. But can we talk about perception, okay? The perception is that boring, conservative, middle-class fucking white people, they show up, they're fat. Oh my, don't yell at me.
I'm sorry. I'm bad. Go ahead. I'll shut up.
I'll shut up. Comment. I'm going to mute, please. You're fine.
I'm trying to explain perception, not reality, okay? The perception is that the guy with his fucking fanny pack in the American flag shirt is not a threat, okay? I'm not saying he's not actually a threat. I'm just saying that the perception is that he's not.
Can I respond? So I hear you.
Not yet. Let him finish.
He just said yes.
Okay. So literally my point is that I'm reinforcing your point that most conservatives don't conceptualize a threat from the right wing, and that might have played into the way that the Capitol unfolded. I literally reinforced your point.
I don't think you did. I don't think you did.
Why
because
not?
I don't agree that the perception is as you say. I think that law enforcement officers and agencies in this country, both federal and otherwise, have identified right-wing activity and militias and these kinds of groups as a humongous threat. So I don't agree that the FBI is a bastion of liberal or left wing politics. And if they are representative of federal law enforcement, I think you're wrong. The perception isn't.
Can I speak to this?
You guys have. Oh yeah.
Sorry, no. If you want to go.
I want to point something out because you guys have been going on this for a while. I think a fair way to conceptualize the idea of like the difference in threat from the left to the right. Right wing leaning like terror attacks or riots, whatever you want to be, tend to be rarer, but tend to be more dangerous and tend to be more targeted. So like the right wingers that tried to fucking kidnap that governor or whatever the fuck, compared to generally pretty, you know, BLM protests or Antifa riots, whatever the fuck you want to call them, tend to be a little bit less focused and a little bit less planned and well articulated. They tend to be, they start as a protest, shit goes crazy, people start rioting. Right wingers do it more rarely, but it tends to be a lot fucking more direct and like scary, I think.
I don't agree with that characterization. I'm sorry. I don't agree that.
Why?
So
It's a bad thing.
No, because
I'm a left.
I understand it.
Pisco, you've talked for so much. I'm sorry, dude. I was gonna fully agree, like that. Yeah.
No, you assholes are fucking like. Oh no, is that Jangles? I don't know. I don't want to interrupt Jangles, but fuck this bullshit. Honestly, Prime, I'm pretty fucking pissed that I got shut down like that. I got something to say here, and if I don't get to say it, I'm out of here, and I'm never coming back to any of your fucking panels again. Fuck you.
The way to get conservatives out into the street is when they perceive a change to be happening that they're fearful of. That's how to get conservatives out in the street to do rioting. All right. I don't think this is a bad thing. This is not an indictment of the left. All right. It's okay. We should be the ones out protesting more. And just statistically, when you get a shit ton of people out in the streets, more of those protests are going to turn into riots. That is perfectly fine. That doesn't make the causes bad. That doesn't make anything bad. This is not a bad thing that is happening, and it should happen. If you are a progressive, if you want change, if you want the status quo to change, you should want the left to be out there protesting way more. All right, that's all he's saying. The thing is, when you are defending the status quo, yeah, what BadNick said just now, it's going to be a lot more targeted, and it has a lot more potential to be lethal and violent because it's more targeted, it's more motivated. I think that's perfectly fine what Nick said.
So I just want
no comment check.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, Connor, you said that this is true in the perception. You said the perception of people. Guess what? People, that's the perception of white, male, straight, fucking people. In the perception of a certain limited group, in the perception of, let's just say a culture. Let's not essentialize and make it, because it's not all white, straight men, but in the group of cops, in the group of people who think a certain way, yeah, I'm a lot more dangerous than Uncle MAGA with his fucking IEDs in his fanny pack that you're not checking because you think it's just a fanny pack with this diabetes medication in it. So I'm sorry, I got a little passionate there, but like seriously, like this is not, don't say perception, like our perception is fucking universal. Don't fucking erase my perception from the equation of like what you're, considering there. I think you have a very limited view and like it shows, it fucking shows. That's why you're tripping over your dick and like, just, I'm gonna calm down. I'm gonna mute myself, okay? You guys go on.
I can disagree with Connor in everything he said, because when I say that.
Oh my god, holy shit, chat. I actually did get a little bit like, right, then I gotta calm down. Let me put my Waluigi up here, and oh my god, he's falling over. I'm like shaking, I had so much coffee, chat. Oh my god, seriously, I hate that shit though. Like perception and the people's perception, you're just like taking over everyone's perception and be like, oh, this is people's perception. What I think is people's perception. Go fuck yourself with that No, I understand why people react the way they do to Connor now. I totally get it now. All right. Did I not start out this panel really calm and really nice? I think I did.
To fucking people in churches. It's not a threat to the cops. The cops are wearing fucking body armor. They're rolling into the call after the shooting has already occurred. So if I look at fucking Jim Bob, the fucking dude with his fucking fanny pack and a concealed weapons permit, I don't see a threat because he's protecting the status quo. I literally don't know where we disagree, and I have no idea how the fuck I'm making you mad. Whereas
I just feel like my perceptions are getting walked over, right? When you said people's perceptions, right? But you're talking about a certain group of people's perceptions, and you
sure. When did I ever say it was universal? I never said it was universal. I was talking about law enforcement perception.
You didn't like say, okay, in the sense of the cops, their perception. But you said people's perception. You said people's. And that's what
so if I modify it, hold on, guys, Jesus Christ, it's literally a conversation between me and her right now, okay? So if I modify my language to say law enforcement's perception and conservative America's perception.
That helps
Do
a lot.
we agree?
Yeah, I think we
Do
agree.
we agree?
With that. think we
No, I don't agree with
Wait,
that.
Do I not? Maybe I
do
missed something.
not agree with that.
Why?
I don't agree that law enforcement, just you saying so doesn't make it so.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
agree that law enforcement's
wrong.
perspective.
Good point,
Prove
Pisco.
it
wrong.
wrong. No comment check and
Okay,
Pisco.
it was literally a linchpin argument of the beginning of the conversation for the storming of the Capitol. You're shooting your own point in the foot.
No, I'm
What are
not.
you doing?
Please,
I'm
please,
not.
Please,
You
let me
take the
finish.
W.
Please.
Fuck.
Pisco
Jangles,
and No
Jangles.
Comment Check, did either of you disagree with what I said and the way I framed things when I was bringing up the research about how
I disagreed.
You disagreed? Okay, tell me how, because you said there was no
Okay.
research. I have.
No, I disagreed with your, first of all, your notion that I am making a normative statement about how many or having a lot of protests is bad. I didn't make a normative assessment about the number of protests being good or bad. Second, you're conflating a couple things. One is you're conflating protests and riots and how dangerous certain groups are. I don't think that the left should have more riots. Right? So do we agree on that? I don't think that the left should have more assassination attempts or more storming of the Capitol's events. And also, I think you're wrong on the numerosity question. How do you categorize the BLM protests? Is it all one big protest? Are there many little protests? So I would not give ground or presume some kind of numerosity to the number of protests or riot events. I don't concede that the left does more of these. And I don't concede that we should be equally worried about both of them. And I don't agree that the perception of law enforcement to their own selves is that the left is more dangerous to them. I don't agree with that.
Well,
You're
we
then you're
agree to
just
disagree that
wrong
you're
on that
wrong.
last
Yeah,
one.
What?
You're
What?
just wrong.
just
There's
are.
research
Like-
to support that.
What research?
But Pisco, wasn't that your argument at the start? And I think Nocommentchick too, right? Wasn't part of your argument for why they weren't prepared well enough? Is that they saw this group of protesters and they saw people that looked like them, people that thought like them. So it just seems like you're now arguing against your own.
No,
Yeah,
it wasn't.
This is what pisses me off, because that's what I said. I had research. to
wasn't
back it
my
up.
argument.
The reason that the entire topic here is, why did the Capitol police officers, why did the DC police officers, why did they treat BLM different than they treated the people storming the Capitol building? The reason I gave, and I've research to support this, is I think it's reasonable to think that the cops tend to be more higher in system justification and social dominance. All right, they tend to be higher in that, and so they probably saw BLM as more of a threat than they saw the MAGA people who are upholding the status quo. All right, I'm not putting a normative statement on either of those. I'm trying to give it a descriptive statement. I'm agreeing. That was the entire. That's our side.
I
That the
don't
Capitol
disagree with
police
you.
Officers treated. You disagree that Capitol police officers are treating the like.
I know. I agree
I
that.
disagree with Connor.
agree
Maybe
they're
it's
treating them
Corona burning
different.
up my brain right now, right? But I'm pretty sure that was like one of the
No.
reasons you gave for why these were treated differently.
No, I wasn't. So I know what I said, and I know what my arguments are, and I understand that they're being treated differently. I don't think, and I don't have any evidence to support that is because cops genuinely feared BLM more than they genuinely feared the right wing.
Because that was the thing that you brought up. It's just because they're
What I
racist.
said?
No, that's what Pisco
The
said.
argument, sorry, to be clear, the argument that Conorpoints is suggesting is perhaps because cops genuinely feared for these Lafayette Square people, that was the reason that they treated them with a harsher hand than
You're adding in a
What?
word that has nothing to do with this. Okay,
What?
you said genuinely feared. Okay, so let's narrow down the spectrum of violence. I will articulate this to you, and if you don't interrupt me, I'll give you a whole idea. I'll give you a whole idea. Okay, so if I'm worried about getting killed, right? If I'm worried about getting killed, I'm worried about an anti-government sovereign citizen militia member who has an AR-15 in his fucking house or in his truck, and he has a fucking unregistered machine gun at his house. And if I pull him over, he's going to execute me because he literally doesn't believe in traffic laws. Okay. So if I'm thinking about mortal threat, okay, the second part of it, dude. Do you want information or not? I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not even going to give it to you. No,
I understand what you're going to say.
You just want my dick tip, and I want to give you the whole thing, and you don't even want it.
It's just so
I'm not
obvious.
giving it to you. No,
It so obviously doesn't explain Lafayette Square, because in Lafayette Square, your argument would have to be no.
Part of the point. Do you want to wait for it, or do you just want to argue against half a point?
Okay, finish it. I know what you're going to say. Even though it's not a legitimate fear.
Let him finish. Please, Connor, finish your point quickly. I'm going to go ahead.
If I'm in fear of my life, then I'm more afraid of a fucking militia member. But they're statistically infinitely more rare for a cop to encounter. So then, if I'm actually talking about getting my head caved in by a fucking cinder block or somebody throwing a fucking Molotov cocktail at me, which while not deadly is still a concern for my health and well-being, what are the chances that it's going to be from the left? Infinitely more so? Infinitely more so. And if you disagree with that, I don't even know what fucking reality we live in. It's
That's
insane.
a good question. What reality you're
done?
living in, honestly, because like that sounds fucking unhinged as fuck, dude. Like to think that like left-wing terrorism poses more of a threat at this point than right-wing terrorism after what we just saw. And like, granted, the conversation was like, first of all, let's eliminate the thing that happened just now. Other than that, what has the right ever done? Other than this, what has the right ever done?
So
Can I please respond to what Conorpoints said? Because it's laughable. It's laughable.
Fine, respond.
Okay, so you can say all you want, as much time as you want, that there. I thought we weren't going into the statistics of what's actually true, and you were just referencing the perception. If that's the case, then why reference statistics about what's more likely and what's not more likely? All that matters is the perception. So I don't want to hear statistics.
How many cops are killed every year?
Okay, let me finish my point, please. Number two is anything you have to say about the perception of actual danger does not apply to the case studies we're using. Lafayette Square.
It is literally the only thing that matters.
No, it doesn't.
The perception that
Stop.
is literally the only thing
It
that matters
doesn't.
in this case.
Your model. Excuse me. Your model does not apply to Lafayette Square because no one on this call can tell me that any of the cops in that situation feared for their life in Lafayette Square. So your model fails to explain the difference between Lafayette Square and what happened in the Capitol building. Can you guys explain that? How does your model of fear?
Yeah,
No,
All right.
Pisco,
You
I
talked way too much in
can.
here. I need to
Okay.
ask it. I'm sorry. Did you speak up? Someone else?
No,
It doesn't explain Lafayette.
For my screen, it does. I can explain this to you. All right. I think you would agree with me if you calm down for a second. My entire opening statement, my thesis, if you will, is that the cops treated the BLM protests and the Capitol insurrection. They treated those differently. All right. That's
Agreed.
on your side. Okay. Agreed. Awesome. The question is why. I have research to say that cops tend to be high in they want to enforce the status quo and they want to dominate. All right.
Sure.
All right? Okay, cool.
That's different than fear, right?
No, I'm not done. You're gonna be
No,
quiet.
but we have to stop. We have to stop. We have to do every point by point.
Yeah, because you do not know what you're saying, all right? I swear to God, we're on the same side. I would hate to have you argue this because you would make us look so bad, okay?
No,
All right,
you're.
we agree on those points, okay? We agree, all right?
No, we don't agree because we're conflating.
Shut the fuck up. They treated BLM and the insurrection.
Yeah, we agree on that.
All right,
Yep.
we agreed on that. Okay, and cops tend to be high in enforcing the status quo, and they tend to be high.
Stop there. Stop there. Stop there. Right?
Shut the fuck up. I'm
So
right.
That's not the same. That's not the same. No, I'm not arguing your facts. I'm not arguing your truth. I'm saying that is not the same as fear for your life.
Is that what I said? Is that what I argued?
Okay, but that's what Connor is arguing.
Okay?
So your evidence doesn't go to Connor's point.
You either fear for your life or nothing can change in your behavior.
No,
right?
but that's Connor's point. Your evidence doesn't go to Connor's point, right? If it's not the same dependent variable, you're not offering evidence for Connor's point. Because Connor's point is about fear for life.
Okay, fuck Connor for a second. All right, I'm asking you. You seem to disagree with me when I was talking earlier, okay?
I thought maybe something else.
I got to that point. And so it's when you're a cop, you are going to perceive BLM, since they are challenging the status quo, with less charitability than you would perceive MAGA. That's it. All right? Cops' perception is literally the only thing that matters here. All right?
How is it the only thing?
But perception of fear. What Connor's saying is perception of fear, not just general perception. I agree that attitudes and opinions.
I'm not saying
we don't know that.
Valid. I'm saying that there's a reason.
No, I'm not talking about the validness, the validity, or not either. What we're talking about is whether, in fact, cops feared more for the Lafayette protesters than they feared more in the Capitol Hill case. And I think that anyone who pretends that the cops feared more of the Lafayette Square protesters doesn't have a clue of what's going on. That's not the model that explains the difference here. Maybe it's some other perception, right? What about what I'm saying is controversial.
Let me jump in here because you guys are talking a fuck ton. I want to give a side point to Connor here, in that I partially agree with him, but I also think the idea of fear for their lives isn't necessarily the only thing that matters. It's also fear for their fucking jobs, okay? When the people on the left are all talking about defunding cops, it's not just fear for their lives, it's fear for their fucking jobs, their livelihood. If the left quote unquote wins or whatever, cops might feel like their fucking job is going down the tubes because this defund the police bullshit. So it goes beyond just, oh, I'm kind of scared for my life. It's I'm scared for my fucking livelihood.
Well, that's different than what Connor said.
How
That would be
how did nobody
Oh
pick
my
up that?
god.
that's different than what Connor said.
You guys asked.
No, but like you're defending a point that Connor said that perhaps the difference was because cops feared more for the left protesters, feared from them. Not he's meaning fear for their physical safety. He mentioned it.
How do you know
No,
what it means?
Because he said maybe not mortal peril, but also physical bodily autonomy. He's not talking about political fear.
Can I address this point, or are we just going to talk about what I fucking said over and over again without me actually saying it?
Here's what we do.
Okay.
Dooby, who's dying ever so slowly, faster than normal, needs to head out. Dooby, thank you for joining us. Tell the world a little about yourself, where they can find you.
You can find me on the Politics Discord server, discord.gg/politics. Pisco's wrong about everything. I agree with Connor for once. I think it's the first time ever. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Dooby will now go off to crawl into the cracks of our subconsciousness where our night terrors live.
Nice.
But thank you for joining us. Crawl out some other time. We'd love to have you.
Okay, see you guys later.
All right.
Peace.
See you, buddy.
Okay.
Stay safe. Get better.
So.
Okay.
Right,
So
I'm going to give you guys a choice, right? Because I've let this go way over time. But
Please.
do you want to continue yelling at each other about this, right, or move on to our third topic about impeachment? This is your choice.
I would appreciate a closing statement for anyone who wants to just put a code on it.
Let's let chat vote.
Okay.
Can we have a
all right.
vote in chat? What does chat think?
I don't want to be here all night. Okay, chat's cool and all, but like
Chat's gonna take too long. I get it. Democracy's too difficult. I get it.
Make your
Agreed.
statement quick. So we have time for the last. I'm doing this to respect your time. I want to respect all of your schedules. So go ahead. We'll go with Nocommentchick. You can go first.
Like, if I want to talk about this more, or like give a closing statement, or what? Sorry, closing statement. Okay, yeah, like my whole thing is like, I mean, this is a huge thing. And Connor, I really wasn't trying to take the piss on you tonight. I'm sorry if I got passionate, and if it sounded like I don't like you, I do. You're fine. I don't dislike you. Talking to you is actually like really useful, and I like that you're like a kind of gateway in between the right and the left. That's actually really cool, and you're different than most people that I talk to most of the time. But I think that the point remains that when we say like perspective, it's so easy to say that without thinking, and then we end up adopting like a certain perspective as the perspective, especially if that's the perspective that's like empowered, especially if that's the perspective of the establishment, especially if that's the perspective of like a force of physical strength like the police are. That's kind of all I was saying is that like just remember that your perspective is not the only one, and in this case that was a dog shit perspective because the people who had their eye on Parler had it right this time. And please, for fuck's sake, I mean, I don't know if you're still connected to people in law enforcement, but that needs to change. They need to get their heads out of their asses and start looking at the real terrorist threat if they are indeed like officers of the peace and not just like a force of tough guys, not just another fucking gang, because that's what a lot of us out here, especially marginalized people, are afraid of. Anyway, that sounded like I was angry. I wasn't. I respect everybody on the panel. That's all.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if I have a whole lot of comments about what just ensued for the past 30 minutes. My only point on this was that I'm not sure if we can draw say that like the reason there was a disproportionate response was because of the race of the people involved. I think that the Capitol Police fucked up. I wish that there was a better response. It was clearly an attempt to fuck up our government. I'm not cool with that. Screw those people. I'm happy we're moving on.
Okay, Jangles.
I thought I made what was a very reasonable, data-driven, descriptive explanation of why the responses of the Capitol Hill insurrection and the BLM protest back in like June, why they were different. The reason I gave, and I'm just reiterating my opening statement here because it was never really challenged, is that police officers tend to be more justify the system more, to endorse the status quo more, as well as endorse hierarchies a little bit more. Okay, and that's the reason they saw BLM as threatening the social status quo, and they saw the MAGA people threatening the status quo. That's it. I think I have no, obviously we have no data on these exact instances, but for overall trends, I think that's a reasonable inference about the difference between the two. So I'll stand by that.
Sorry, I'm blanking. Nick.
Yeah. All I'm going to say is at the end here, it got really fucking dumb and everyone was screaming past each other about shit nobody actually ever said. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's hard to come to the idea that like BLM or Antifa or like the left as a general rule are probably more of a threat to police in the eyes of the police. Like that, if you disagree with that, I just don't understand how. This whole situation with Capitol Hill is very clearly an administrative fuck up. There were probably some cops on the ground who did some bad shit, but like it just goes to show that I think this was a really big wake-up call, and I do think the right will be taken more seriously as a threat in the future. But I also want to kind of give the opposite side of the coin. I want to say how fucking impressed I am by the cops, because even though they were overrun, even though they got into the building, even though so few people died, all of our fucking elected officials were safe. Nothing really that bad happened. There wasn't a ton of damage. Like, honestly, I'm fucking impressed that it went this well with how terribly everything was stacked in the favor of the protesters. So that's me just trying to be the enlightened centrist.
Okay, all right. Last time on the panel. Thanks for going out in blaze of glory. Go ahead, Connor.
Do you mind if I go after Pisco?
Okay. Okay, sure. But both of you, keep it quick so we can get to this on topic. Pisco.
Okay. To address the point from Jangles, I think that your research or whatever study that you're pointing to is totally valuable as evidence in this discussion. That said, it's not dispositive evidence, right? The police officers here aren't the ones who are largely in control of the response. Part of that response is in the hands of Donald Trump. So whatever you have to say about the tendencies and emotions and perspectives of cops might be totally inapposite or not relevant if the decision's out of their hands. That's one point. So while I do think it's worthwhile, I don't think it's dispositive. I don't accept at face value BadNick and Conorpoints contention that perception of fear, like the fear perception, explains this difference at face value. Perhaps it explains some of the difference in some circumstances, but all I was saying, it's clearly not a model that can be applied to all these situations, because in the two case studies we were looking at, the difference between Lafayette Square and the Capitol Hill protest, in Lafayette Square, I don't think any reasonable observer can possibly say that the cops in those instances feared for their life more than the case of the Capitol Hill protest. That's it, right? So those two case studies, the model of perception of fear fails, at least with respect to the micro level. And you could argue, probably what I would say is, in the Lafayette Square, someone ordered them to go and clear the response and to do it violently. And so whatever the perceptions were of the cops is totally irrelevant. It's because they're just following orders, and they'll hew to that more than they will to their own. They'll follow orders, right? So that is all I was saying, and so that's why I think it's presumptuous for Conorpoints or anyone else to say that they have the answer on what the difference is, and that answer is the individual perceptions and fears and political dispositions of the individual cops. That's not dispositive evidence, and it clearly isn't a model that applies perfectly to the case studies we were challenging. What is wrong with that, chat? What is wrong with that?
Connor.
All right, so Nocommentchick, I actually appreciate your passion. Generally speaking, I am the person who is getting very passionate to the point of like basically just yelling at people. So I actually sincerely appreciate it. So don't ever think that I am offended by passion. I'm actually very receptive to it. And you're right that I just assumed that my default cis het white male perspective is the perspective. But you know, we're still 30% of the population and relatively socially powerful. So if you would forgive me for my semantic flub, what I was trying to say is that conservatives and law enforcement specifically fear the left more than they fear the right. So while terrorism might be a more real threat that kills more people on a year-to-year basis, what people preoccupy themselves with, and you can see this in the propaganda that right-wing people and cops consume, they are more afraid of the left than they are of the right. So I think it's actually kind of funny, and I'm not trying to be a smartass, but I think it's funny that I tried to agree with lefties and still got attacked. And I just want to say that like this is kind of why the left's like can't do anything, because I'm trying to help you and give you information and I'm still getting fucking shit on. So it's kind of interesting doing that. And then hold on, I'm almost done, I promise. And then finally, Pisco, I don't ever think that I made any kind of counter to the narrative that the fuck up was administrative and that the consideration by law enforcement not to address the right-wing protest the same way that they addressed Black Lives Matter was made at an administrative level. I don't think I've made any comment that brought that down. But you're largely making a semantic argument about fear. I can fear more things than just mortality. If I'm at a riot, I can be afraid that my line's going to break. I could be afraid that my skull's going to get crushed in by a fucking, by a cinder block. I could be afraid that it's going to get hit by a fucking Molotov cocktail. And if I deal with 6 months worth of protests and riots from BLM, and then I hear that a conservative protest is going to be rolling through town, I think it's logical and based in the cis het white male conservative perspective that conservatives are less of a threat than Antifa based on perception alone. Now we can get into the spectrums of violence, we can get into how violence is perpetrated, we can talk about who it's perpetrated to, we can talk about reality, we can talk about the FBI and all that kind of shit, and I am very interested in having that conversation. If you want to have that conversation, I am more than happy to do it. But you largely made a semantic argument that I think is completely incorrect, and with that I will shut the fuck up and happily move on to topic 3.
I'd be glad if you and your buddies could just widen your perspective a little bit. That's all.
Everyone. Yeah, great. So we're gonna move on. A quick side note to you, Connor. A chatter here in my channel desperately wants a piece of you. Samantha Banana has been calling you out constantly. She wants you in the open walk-on panel that'll be happening afterwards. If you have a few moments to be yelled at, because exactly what's going to happen.
If we end at 11:30, I'll stay till midnight.
Okay, all right. So we'll move on. But just before we do that, hey everybody, please give me a follow. We have a lot more viewers than we usually do. We having 242. Holy crap! We got 242 no raids. This is amazing.
You're welcome. You're welcome anytime, Prime. Anytime.
Okay, sure. Thank you. But no, thank you. Seriously, everyone, for all the support. This is a lot more than we usually do. And so since all of you are hanging around here, final topic. And if you want to address something that happened previously, you can during your opening statement, but then that's it. Come on, we got to move on. If I can, oh my God, I can't type. All right, hold on. It is, as soon as I can pull it up, holy shit. Final topic is
Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have threatened to impeach Trump if he does not resign following the Capitol riots. Is this worth doing, considering Trump has less than 2 weeks in office? Is there a certain principle of decency that must be upheld through initiating the impeachment process? Would this move help to heal the country or grow its divisions? Or is this just a political ploy on the part of the opposing party? Will an impeachment process be a distraction to more important priorities that the country needs addressed?
That's why I call him my right-hand man. All right, so you heard it.
Can I be your right-hand girl for this, to start this off, just because to respond to something from Connor real quick, and then lead into this? Okay, so I just wanted to say to my white, straight, cis, male comrades out there, I fucking love you. I do everything I can not to essentialize you, and I know that you're not all like Connor or like anything. I know that you're all individuals, and I appreciate the fuck out of you, and this is not about turning you into, as I said with Destiny, the Dio Brando of oppression, because I know you're not the Dio Brando of oppression. But as far as impeaching the president, I think it's a fucking Chad move. It's about time. The real question is, like, what do you impeach the president on? Because there's actually like a number of different routes you could go. I guess I haven't taken a look to see which one Pelosi's looking for, but I think it's a base decision. I think that if anything's gonna heal the country, I don't know, it's not going to be like equivocating and like trying to like throw out a bone to the terrorist right-wing like dark heart id of America. It's going to be taking a stand and telling the truth for once, instead of trying to be like the media and call it, I guess both sides kind of have a point here. No, enough of that shit. That is fucking beta bullshit, and we're done with it. Okay, that's all.
Okay, Nick.
Hey, buddy. So as far as this goes, I think, yes, absolutely impeach him again. Anybody who disagrees with it on the grounds of, oh, there's only 2 weeks left is dumb and wrong, because the entire point of impeaching him again is because it gives Congress the ability to bar him from running again in 2024. Not that he can, he's old as fuck. Um, but it also allows them to possibly remove him from office early, which is, yes, it's only 2 weeks, but it's symbolic. It's symbolic and it's precedential. We want to set a precedent that a president cannot fucking do this and get away with it. The other thing is, if you remove him from office early, it prevents him from like last minute pardoning a bunch of these fucking idiots. It prevents him from trying to pull some shit where he resigns and tries to get Pence to pardon him. Not that Pence would, but he could try it. It's just you can't convince me that it's the wrong move to impeach him. I don't think it would help heal the country or grow its divisions. I don't think it would do anything. I think everybody who's on the side that they're on would stay regardless of what happens. I doubt anything changes there. It's probably not a political ploy, because a ploy would imply that it's somehow not like justified, but it absolutely fucking is. Get him out of there. And the impeachment process being a distraction to, like, it's not, though. It just isn't a distraction. The votes take a day each in each of their fucking things. It's not a distraction from anything. Like, that's dumb. Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Jangles.
Yeah, to the argument that, oh, there's only 2 weeks left. If I was at my job and I had like 2 weeks left of my contract and I decided to come into the cafeteria where I work to just take a big shit on the table, I think it would be very justifiable, even though I only have 2 weeks left of my contract, to go ahead and fire me, because, you know, that's against the rules, and how much longer I have left at the company has no bearing on whether or not the rules have been broken. I think it's yeah, there are the like things of, like, you know, what if he tries to pardon a bunch of extra people, or what if he tries to bestow more medals of honor on like sports people, both of which are equally terrible. But it's also about sending a message that he is going to go out of office with his tail between his legs. He tried to start a little insurrection. He got incredibly embarrassed. Now he's going with his tail between his legs. Like, no, never mind. I guess, you know, I didn't find any voter fraud, and, you know, 60 of my lawsuits were thrown out, and I'm going to say that, yeah, I do agree with the peaceful, you know, transfer of power, but I want to pout about it, and I've been banned from everything, including my bank, by the way. His bank dropped him like a couple of minutes before this panel started, and to just to cap that off with oh, actually, we're just going to go ahead and kick you out, you're not even going to finish. I think it sent the best message it can. You're not going to make MAGA go away, but you are going to make it look like a fucking joke in the eyes of most people, and that's the best you could do with
little
anything,
dudes come up,
like this.
and like I just naturally love little dudes.
Yeah, so to start off my opening statement, I would like to say I got a little heated earlier, and I apologize for that. I'm going to try to rein it back in, be my normal calm self. I'm
No,
very
do the
tired.
opposite of that. That's better for content.
I'm sorry. I'm a calm person. I'm just very tired, so I'm going to try to rein it back in. In terms of impeachment, I think that spreading misinformation and inciting a riot are clearly grounds for impeachment. I think that the right needs to start standing for decency and like actual values. Attacking institutions is not conservative. We need to separate ourselves from Trump. Frankly, the left was vindicated in its view that Trump's rhetoric was dangerous, and the people on the right who are over and over defending him have to just eat that and get rid of him. Like, I mean, the truth is that everything the left had been telling us, like, I mean, like, look, there's been a lot of people on the right that have extended charity to Trump, and I think the truth was that charity, I think we've seen reason that we don't need to extend that charity anymore. He a very serious point of our government was attacked. As far as I'm concerned, there's no argument left anymore. The left was right about this. Get him out. That's my position on it.
Connor.
Yep. I think Nick and Drew said it beautifully. I think we should be fucking done. The only way that I wouldn't want impeachment or criminal prosecution to proceed, Pisco can talk to us about the legality of this, but basically would be like if he were to sign like a non-disclosure agreement, if he was to sign a contract saying I'm not going to run again, if he was to almost like a plea bargain where it's like, hey, I won't run again. I'll shut the fuck up about the fraud. I won't try to incite any more riots. And basically, in lieu of you dragging my name through the mud for 6 months through an impeachment process and fucking criminally prosecuting me for the fucked up shit that I did, even if you let me slide on taxes, I will shut the fuck up and I will disappear. And that's the only way that I wouldn't want prosecution to go forward, is basically if Trump pleads out and promises to shut the fuck up and go away.
Pisco. Don't make it too long because we got to get back in.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to briefly mention, I would hate myself if I didn't. Conorpoints, with all due love and respect, mentioned my argument before with respect to the police stuff as semantic. I don't agree with that characterization, but I'll leave it there. On the matter of impeachment, I think that people need to wake up. I've been saying for weeks, really years, that people don't take Trump seriously, and it starts to democracy and to our physical safety. And so I think that, it's very unlikely that the Senate will take up a trial before his presidency ends, but people need to wake up and realize that he is currently a danger to our democracy and our people. And the more we can move our country into a situation in which Trump has less leverage, or if Trump does something crazy, the Senate can reconvene quickly to get him out of office or remove him from office, the better. And I think all this time people have been underestimating him on what he's capable of, and it's shown recently in the Capitol riot. And I hope that it doesn't show again. And that's why I think impeachment proceedings are proper. And everyone's already explained why impeachment is the proper proceeding for the conduct that Trump had in office. And I think Nocommentchick was correct also in saying it's not the only thing of impeachable that Trump has committed in the last 4 years.
Okay, let's get into it.
So there's literally any disagreement?
I actually, yes, I do. I love Connor, and I think he says a lot of nice things, but holy fuck, Connor, I hate you right now. The idea that we would let him go and, like, give him a break on his taxes and all that shit as long as he shuts the fuck up. Look, I get the idea of that, but fuck, I hate that you said that, because I hate that idea of, like, letting him slide as long as he stops talking or whatever. Fuck me. Throw his ass in prison. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to...
Well, so just to address it really briefly, so what I'm afraid of, if you prosecute him, drag him through the courts, destroy his name, all that kind of shit, you turn him into a martyr. And then if you turn him into a martyr and you take away everything that he really has no incentive to shut the fuck up. And that's where I'm worried that he would be able to inspire a certain level of terroristic devotion that would basically result in more loss of human life.
Is he already doing that?
This is a lot like the heckler's veto, right? If it would upset a lot of people, that means we have to stop it. It's kind of like if it disrupts the social order, well, a bunch of people have to come in and
listen,
buzz about it. So
if you guys want to go. If you guys want to go balls to the wall, prosecute his ass, throw him in jail, and then you're also ready to go to war with the Trump cult, then fuck it, let's do it. But but you have to be ready for that shit. You have to be ready for the next time that people come to Capitol Hill, they're going to have AR-15s and they're going to mean business. That's
kind of point. Well, they're already doing that.
You have to let a kid get away with like raising a fuss in the store.
There you go.
Throw a bigger tantrum later. Like, no, like you got to quash it now, because I don't think they're like allowing this to happen. Like, well, here you don't do it again. After you almost caused an insurrection on Capitol Hill, don't do it again.
Well, Pisco, is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as like a non-prosecution agreement?
Yes, you could have such an agreement, but what I'm saying is, how far do you stretch your principle? If Trump were to literally, now he didn't do this, but if he literally was shooting staffers in the White House, would you extend the same gratitude to him? I mean,
no, of course not.
Okay,
no,
so
here's my problem with this. Hold on, I'm sorry, PCO. One thing that I'm surprised somebody hasn't brought up yet is the precedent. Like, if we were to take your idea here, Connor, and like let him go, and like he becomes a martyr, or like he doesn't become a martyr and all this, the problem is that sets a really fucking scary precedent for future presidents, for future supporters of people like this. They know now that if they go just towards the line but don't quite cross it, they can continue to push that to see how much further they can go. If we make a hard fucking deal of this, and yeah, if that means more riots that we got to quell from like right-wing LARPing dipshits, and like, yeah, it sucks and it's an unfortunate deal, but I don't want to set the precedent that a president of the United States can do this and then get away with it better off and like avoiding all of these prosecutions. That scares me.
Okay. My only counterpoint, see what I did there, is Nixon. So we didn't prosecute fucking Nixon in order for the country to fucking move on. And then also, I am going to hold you to this, because if we go ahead with prosecution and there's running gun in battles in the streets of America because the Trump cultists come out, I don't have a problem with that. Basically, if you stand up to fight for fucking Trump, like this is actually what really pisses me off. Most of the people who have been co-opted to fight for Trump are allegedly libertarians. That blows my fucking mind. But if you're so fucking dumb that you're a libertarian, that you think you need to get into running gun battles with Trump in order to fucking preserve the union by installing him king, I don't care if the cops kill you. And that's like, okay, but I'm gonna hold you to that. So if we have running gun battles with Trump cultists in 6 months, you and I are going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about whether or not it was worth it.
I'm all, yeah, absolutely.
But take a second here. One is I think that these people who love Trump are motivated whether you impeach him or don't impeach him. So I don't think impeachment is the key here. And two is I think we should distinguish the Nixon case. And Nixon, he resigned. That is, say what you want. It seems to me an admission that there was wrongdoing by the part of Richard Nixon. And so you don't see that with Trump. And I think that
so what if he resigned? What if he resigned and he signed a non-prosecution agreement and he literally said, I will never take up the MAGA cause again?
If he resigned, I would say, like, don't impeach him. If he resigned, and, I am for the quickest way for him to get out of office now. I think he's a danger and threat now. And you might think that I'm, like, being highly inflammatory or I'm crazy, but I really think that he represents a danger to our country. I don't think he's going to go quietly even now. And mark my words. I hope that I'm wrong.
No, I literally agree with you. I think he could, if he had a Twitter account right now, he could it would literally be a 50-50 shot on whether or not he left quietly and whether or not he was like, hey, bring your AR-15s, come on January 20th, we're taking the shit. Like literally, like it's a 50-50 shot on whether or not he would do that.
Right. And that's why I think that, Pelosi talking to maybe she shouldn't have released a statement that she talked to the Joint Chiefs or whatever about the nuclear stuff. But the fact that we even have to have that conversation should signal to people that we are not out of the woods yet and don't get comfortable. And there are protests happening and armed protests in the next week, and to be prepared for whatever. And so as a matter of just safety of ourselves, I think it makes sense to have the impeachment proceedings started.
So beyond, about this though, beyond the armed protests, right? Like, there's that. And I don't think we should negotiate with terrorists. Like, fuck that, right? So
that's a good point. We should linger there for 1 second. Imagine if someone said, don't get involved in some war, like World War II, right? Because we're afraid of the damage it might cause. Well, we're also afraid in the long run of just allowing, Hitler to win, or of allowing presidents to get to the almost close to the finishing line of being tyrants. So I think that's a great point, Prime.
But what about those 74 million Americans, right? Who aren't going to actually take up arms, but like who for whatever reason see that the election or believe that the election was stolen from them, believe that the system is out to get them, and I mean it is to a certain extent, but but are aggrieved, and is what I'm getting at. They are aggrieved, and seeing the president, whom they still believe in for whatever fucking reason, they still believe in him, being dragged through another impeachment hearing after the debacle that was the first one, right? Like, how do we move forward as a country? If we do this, I mean, the divisions will deepen even more if half the country watches this president be impeached once again. Is that worth it?
And can I want to point out how you literally create an American civil war. Go after Trump as hard as you want to, turn him into a fucking martyr, and then introduce really strict gun control. That's straight. That's how you kill cops and feds. That's how you literally get people from the military to go home. If you like, it would almost take an intentional fuck up by Democrats, but I believe in Democrats and lefties to fuck up that hard. So literally prosecute fucking Trump to the fullest extent of the law, and then ban assault rifles and do a mandatory buyback. I guarantee you'll spark a civil war.
I want to jump in here because I'm a left-leaning guy, but I also like guns. I have to say, I get what you're saying, But one thing I have to imagine that the Democrats are not that fucking stupid that they would do that to Trump and then turn around mere weeks later or months later and try to do that. Like, I have to think if they go
won't.
this route, they're probably smart enough to like lay off the gun control shit for a couple of years to let things calm down. I love guns. I own guns. I think they're great. I also do think gun control needs to be a little bit more handled, but I don't think the Dems are that stupid that they're going to be like, okay, we got Trump out of office. He's in prison. Boys, bring us all your guns. They're ours now, fuckers. Like, get fucked.
But
Like,
we can stop by the courts too. I mean, you now have one of the most, talk about packing the courts, one of the most packed courts, federal judiciaries in history, with people who love Heller and will gladly strike down a law of Congress for violating the Second Amendment. So there's not much danger of that. And then Joe Manchin and those people they're not gonna overturn the legislative filibuster, and they're not gonna pass that legislation.
I appreciate your guys' optimism and pragmatism. I do. I hope you're completely fucking right. I really do.
My thing, Connor, would be that if you're willing to admit that Democrats constantly fuck up, do we really think they're going to be successful in passing gun control? They constantly fuck that shit up, dude. Come on.
Yeah, but see, like, I trust Democrats to fuck shit up in like the stupidest way possible. So like it's like
Fair.
so it's like you're asking me like, are they capable of achieving this? And I'm like, no. But then that makes that the more likely thing to happen.
True.
I would like to formally
I'm
state,
memeing. But
I'd
still.
like to formally state that I lost all my guns in a boating accident a few weeks ago. So
Oh,
just
you
letting
poor
y'all know.
guy.
Yeah, so it's
no,
really
what are you gonna
unfortunate.
do? It's
I
alright,
don't
my
know,
gun's
man.
not
Just lost
registered,
him in the
so-
lake there.
Well, you said Conorpoints that you're constantly surprised at how bad and incompetent Democrats are. This is sort of in context of the impeachment proceedings. I think there's no indication that Republicans are going to move on from Trump, even if there were impeachment proceedings, and that seems highly destructive to their electoral chances. What do you guys think of, what is the future after Trump? I don't think that changes impeachment or no impeachment.
What's interesting? There was a poll that came out that I think it was less than half of Republicans supported the Capitol rioting thing.
Yeah,
which is sort of interesting because on one hand, it's sort of scary that many would support it, but it's also fascinating that there was such a split. Yeah, because it could be this could be an inflection point because I obviously this is purely anecdotal. We'll have to see how the data turns out, but I think that for a lot of conservatives, this is sort of a wake up call because a lot of like I said, I think in truth, a lot of what happened is a lot of conservatives sort of held their nose for Trump, voted for him, and sort of extended him a little bit of charity here and there on his rhetoric. And I think that got us to a bad point. But I think a lot of those people are like, all right, we're fucking done with the charity at this point. So I'm going to be really interested to see how fast the right breaks away from Trump coming up.
Normie conservatives did not think that they would ever see on their television sets conservatives beating the fuck out of cops. They literally they did not think that image was possible.
Yeah, and to the point of like what this looks like in the future, if there was ever a point in our country's history where the two-party system might break into more than two parties, I feel like we're getting close. The Republican Party, I think, is in an unbelievable amount of schism as far as the split, and this is exactly how the Bull Moose Party started when who was it? Roosevelt? Yeah, Roosevelt lost he lost the Republican nomination. He started his own party. It's the closest we've ever got to having like a third party actually make a decent showing. That was the closest we've ever gotten. That was back in what, like the fucking
Ross Perot. H. Ross Perot, you're forgetting. But other than that, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we didn't win any electoral votes.
That's true. He didn't. Yeah, but he was actually winning the election for a decent amount of time.
Right.
If you believe polls.
What I'm saying,
can't trust polls, right?
This is the closest we're getting to the idea of a third party emerging because of the insane amount of schism on the right now as a result of this. And there's also like a huge call. I don't know if it's huge. It's huge on Twitter, but like a lot of left-leaning people in elected positions talking about pulling senators and shit like that and Congress people who were supporting Trump and taking them out of office because they were supporting this shit. People like Cruz, for instance, like. Yeah. Even if Trump doesn't get impeached or fucked over, there's a chance that some of these Congress people are going to get fucked because the Republicans who want to stay in power might want to turn tail and like fuck over people like Cruz just so they can keep their position by sort of appeasing the Democrats by getting rid of the real problem.
Yeah, but how do you square that with the MAGA and America First movement?
Well,
Because it's
they
still
need
a
to-
large constituency.
if you
Like
want
I
to win
said-
though, but it's not a winning constituency team. Like Georgia, Drew was talking about wake up calls. I think another wake up call should have been Georgia and Arizona. And for conservatives like Drew, that you guys should be feeling vindicated because the candidates there who are much more pro-Trump because they were forced into it, just did not have good enough showings. And for states that were solid red, they're now turning purple, if not swing states. I think that is a wake up call to, where is the next presidential coalition going to come from? Think about the last ones. The regular conservatives didn't work either. McCain lost, Mitt Romney lost. Where do you go from here? I don't know that there's an answer to that. I think Republicans need to do some soul searching.
But I wanna throw
I've
one
got
quick
I've got
thing.
I've got money down on Dan Crenshaw trying to run for president before too long. I got money down.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
just want to say one quick thing that's very important in this conversation. Fuck Mitch McConnell.
So,
We can go elsewhere.
okay.
I'd like to apologize on behalf of Kentucky for Mitch McConnell.
Thank you. Fuck.
So
What do you say,
I'm
Brent?
gonna give you.
Hi, I'm Irene. Nocommentchick. You can follow me here at Twitch at Nocommentchick. You can follow me on YouTube at Nocommentchick. You can even follow my gaming channel on YouTube as NoConsoleChick. I love being here for Prime's panels. I think your panels are bomb, Prime. I learned so much stuff by being on your panels that I never would have known otherwise. Like I didn't know anything about sex robots and sex dolls, but I learned that from here. So everybody go support Prime. I don't think I've said that enough. Give your subs to Prime. Help Prime out. Prime does a lot of legwork. Dealing with egos like this one right here, chat, it's no easy matter. And Prime honestly put up with a lot from me tonight. So I thank you very much, Prime. Yeah, go follow the YouTube videos are great. We've been talking with Destiny a lot lately, so go check those out. And definitely we do debate analysis. We do React content, debates proper, and then on Friday, of course, is the Bird Brains panel at 4 o'clock Eastern time US that last week featured my debate with my knockdown, throw out, drag out debate with one Stephen Bonnell the second. So definitely go check that out, and everybody give some mad love to Prime and to Jangles and to everybody on. I honestly love you all, and I get passionate, but I don't fucking hate anybody. Seriously.
Wasn't that the third time you brought him up?
Oh fuck.
Oh no!
Quick, end it, guys. Let's go. Outros.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Well, yeah, you're gonna have this. Yeah. Sorry, Prime. Or not sorry. I don't know. Maybe this is a good thing.